Chapter 493. With Qin Yu's cultivation, his all-out speed was astonishing. It was more than enough to throw off a low-rank demon beast like the demon wolf. But, what left his heart sinking was that even though he passed through the thorny forest for a long time, he still wasn't able to shake off the demon wolf chasing after him. Looking back from the corner of his eyes, he saw demon wolves with bull-like bodies. The surface of their fur glowed with a faint silver light, as if they were wearing a layer of silver coat. It's the resonance of the demonic wolf's bloodline. With so many of them stacking on top of each other, they can produce an astonishing increase in speed. We can't shake them off, Sun Zifu said with a sad face. Qin Yu was expressionless. Shut up. Sun Zifu was furious. He thought to himself, you were my savior before, so I respected you and fawned over you. Now that you can't even protect yourself, you still dare to be so arrogant. However, when he opened his mouth, a strong gust of wind rushed into his stomach. After hesitating for a while, he still closed his mouth. If he angered the surnamed Yao now, he would be released and thrown down the cliff. In the blink of an eye, he would be devoured by the demon wolves without any scraps left. Living for a moment was a moment. Perhaps there was still a chance to turn things around. A faint light appeared in his eyes, but it quickly dimmed. He had never heard of anyone being able to escape unscathed from a pack of demon wolves. Young Master Sun closed his eyes, recalling his past life. He was savoring the final aftertaste of his life. Qin Yu's eyes were like lightning. As he ran, he observed his surroundings. Suddenly, his eyes brightened and the boulder beneath his feet shattered. He grabbed Sun Zifu and suddenly turned around. The powerful force of his swing caused his eyes to roll back and he cursed inwardly. He was about to die, yet he still couldn't let him live in peace. Then, young Master Sun discovered that Qin Yu was currently climbing up a slope, and it was a very steep one at that. Looking up, the dense forest and rocks obstructed his line of sight. He had no idea what lay ahead. Just as young Master Sun was wondering just what this surname Yao was trying to do, the thorns in front of him were crushed apart by a tyrannical strength and everything in front of him became clear. Cliff. Young Master Sun's eyes widened in shock. At this time, he could feel Qin Yu's body tense up. His speed suddenly increased, like a bolt of lightning. Ah! Young Master Sun instinctively screamed when he realized that he was already in the air. His face instantly paled. One of the restrictions of the Demon Ascension Gate's small world, it was forbidden to fly high in the sky. This was not a test for the cultivators who entered, but to protect them. That was because there were many terrifying devil birds in the sky above the small world. But this protection had now become a talisman that hastened his death. Despair filled Sun Zifu's eyes. He was well aware that he could not withstand the impact of falling from such a great height. Dead. I'm going to die. Behind them, the howls of the demon wolves could be heard. They didn't pause at all. Their powerful hind legs fiercely exerted strength, and the moment their claws tore through the ground, their bodies had already flown out. Then, dignified wolf howls resounded. The rapidly descending demon wolves instantly unfurled two silver wings of light behind their backs. They flapped at an even faster speed, as if they were bolts of silver lightning. In his despair, young Master Sun couldn't help but feel shocked. It was actually the demon wolf king that had awakened its sky bloodline. But soon, this trace of shock turned into mockery. Big idiot surnamed Yao, aren't you feeling extremely sour right now when you see this scene? Qin Yu was expressionless. He allowed his body to be pulled down by the earth. When a wolf howled above him, a bolt of lightning flashed in his eyes. Without warning, Qin Yu punched out his fist. A terrifying strength surged out like a tide, crashing into the cliff. Gotcha! Gotcha! Countless cracks appeared in the blink of an eye. Due to the dark, damp, and overgrown moss, the strange greenish-black stone walls spread rapidly to the surroundings. The entire mountain collapsed with a loud rumble. In that instant, crushed stones fell down like rain. The onrushing demon wolves were caught off guard and were baptized by this rain of stones. With miserable cries, the silver wings on their backs collapsed and they tumbled to the ground. Chinyu punched out, smashing apart the falling stones. He borrowed the strength of the collision to instantly move several dozen feet away. Then, he stepped on a large stone, slowing his falling speed. Then, he took 3 more steps, each step bringing a giant stone crashing down. He was like a nimble monkey, rapidly falling through the rain of stones. And above him, the menacing demon wolf pack that was chasing him could no longer be seen. One could only faintly hear cries of pain and panic. Sun Zifu's eyes widened. As he watched Chinyu calmly move through the rubble, he was shocked. It had to be known that this required not only a tyrannical divine sense to investigate but also a calm attitude and powerful control over one's body. If there was even the slightest mistake, one would end up buried under the rubble. But soon, young Master Sun discovered something. Even if this surname Yao constantly slowed down, according to his current speed, he still might not be able to withstand the fall, right? Well, it was more accurate to say that this surname Yao might be able to withstand the fall, but it would be hard for him to escape his fate of falling to his death. As soon as this conclusion appeared, Sun Zifu wanted to cry. How could he not escape death? No, he had to save himself. He couldn't just sit here and wait for death. Young Master Sun stretched out his hands and tightly held onto Chinyu's arm. He wanted to rush over, but before he could succeed, he felt a strength erupt and shake him away. A great strength gushed out and he immediately soared into the clouds. The shaken Sun Zifu was stunned for a second or two before he realized the cruel fact that he had been abandoned. Ah! Save me! He screamed miserably. Surname Yao, even if I die and turn into a ghost, I won't let you go. Chinyu lifted his foot and kicked out. A piece of rubble hauled out and struck Sun Zifu's abdomen, swallowing his remaining words back into his stomach. He moved to the side to avoid several falling rocks. At the same time, because of the impact of the rocks, his falling body came to a sudden stop and he passed by the demon wolf's gaping maw. This was a demon wolf that had been smashed into the ground by the rubble. Its waist was bent at an astonishing angle, it was clear that its spine had been broken. But, its tyrannical life force allowed it to maintain its fierce and bloodthirsty appearance. Seeing the flesh and blood near its mouth being destroyed, the demon wolf's green eyes glared at Chinyu. This was because as Chinyu stepped onto the falling rocks, the distance between them became increasingly close. Roar! The demon wolf opened its jaws. But before it could roar, Chinyu reached out and grasped the air. With a loud cracking sound, the demon wolf's neck was broken. Chinyu grabbed the demon wolf's corpse and ruthlessly pulled it down. Then, he stepped onto the corpse and grabbed onto Sun Zifu, who had been struck by the falling rocks and was screaming in fear. Then, he crashed into the ground. The thick canopy of the ancient trees rapidly drew closer. A high-speed collision occurred. The thick branches that needed several people to wrap their arms around them were as fragile as sticks, directly smashed apart. Bang! The earth shook and the ground instantly cracked open. Countless rocks flew in all directions. Flesh and blood splashed out. The wolf corpse at the bottom had already turned into a pile of powder. Chinyu's complexion paled. Through his body, he could clearly hear the pain groaning of his bones. With a stuffy cough, he didn't hesitate at all. He grabbed onto the unconscious Sun Zifu and endured the pain in his legs. His figure held far away. In the next moment, countless boulders fell from the sky. In the blink of an eye, they piled up into a mountain of rocks, stirring up a storm of dust. A moment later, the snow-white and dignified demon wolf king appeared at the base of the mountain. As it approached, the tumbling dust seemed to be suppressed, instantly vanishing without a trace. Its icy cold eyes fell on the rubble where several miserable wolf corpses lay. Anger gushed out from its eyes and it reared its head back and roared. In the next moment, countless wolf howls rose up from all directions. The demon wolf pack divided into several groups, carrying with them the rage and killing intent of their king as they rushed into the forest. These two humans could not be allowed to escape. Hashtag. Chapter 494. He exerted strength in his feet, causing the ground to crack open. He twisted his body and slashed out with his palm. The head of the demon beast that turned to bite at him was directly smashed apart and thick white brain juice splashed out. After completing the kill, his body trembled and his complexion paled. Blood flowed down from the corners of his lips as he forcefully pushed himself to the limits of his strength. Fortunately, Sun Zifu could no longer be seen behind him. He took a deep breath and forced himself to focus. He tore off Sun Zifu's robe, which was stained with the blood and flesh of the demon wolves, and threw him onto the bloody corpse of the demon beasts. He rubbed Sun Zifu's robe a few times before picking him up and continuing forward. The demon wolves had a keen sense of smell. Sun Zifu's demon god armor wasn't afraid of being stained, but Sun Zifu didn't have this ability. A moment later, he found a demon beast cave. He endured the stench and crawled in. He sat down cross-legged and swallowed some pills. Although the battle when he jumped off the cliff seemed simple, the truth was that he had consumed a great deal of his mind. Although he had the demon wolf corpse as a buffer when he landed, his mortal body had withstood a tremendous pressure and his organs had shifted. Luckily, the sovereign-level demon body was tough enough. As long as he rested for a night, he would be able to recover. Sun Zifu was awakened by the smell in the cave. He opened his eyes, tears streaming down his cheeks. First, he was excited that he was still alive, and second, the smell was just too sour. But soon, his body stiffened. He looked down and discovered that he was naked. He immediately screamed out in pain and pointed at Qinyu with a trembling hand. This Qinyu had an angry expression on his face that said, "I thought of you as my savior, but you've done something to me." Qinyu opened his eyes and his lips twitched. "Shut up." He didn't want to waste words with him. "The demon wolf pack hasn't left yet. If you don't want to die, then keep quiet." He closed his eyes and continued to heal his wounds. Sun Zifu's eyes were filled with resentment. He frowned and carefully moved his body. When he didn't feel any discomfort, he immediately relaxed. It seemed that he hadn't succeeded yet. Luckily, he woke up quickly, otherwise who knew what sort of unforgivable things that this Yao freak would do to him. He quickly took out a set of clothes and put them on. Then, he thought it wasn't safe, so he took out a second set. He wrapped himself tightly and carefully distanced himself from Qinyu. As he closed his eyes and healed his wounds, Qinyu's pale face unconsciously darkened a bit. This bastard, did he think he was an outstanding beauty? When the cave fell into complete darkness, Qinyu slowly opened his eyes, a sharp light flashing within. Sun Zifu coughed. "Fellow Daoist Yao, thank you for saving my life. Sigh, there's no helping it. I still have to curry favor with those that I should." Qinyu ignored his confused expression. He frowned at the entrance of the cave, a dignified expression on his face. Sensing the heavy aura around him, Sun Zifu's expression changed. "What's wrong?" Although his heart was filled with resentment, he couldn't help but acknowledge Qinyu's abilities. Otherwise, he would have died countless times by now. "The demon wolf pack hasn't left yet." Qinyu's face darkened. Through the cosmic Seacross bell, he could faintly sense the terrifying aura of the demon wolves. They had actually caught up to him. Sun Zifu's face paled. It's the demon wolf king. It has awakened a high-grade sky bloodline, so it must have a second bloodline ability. Could it be Soul Lock? Qin Yu frowned. What is a Soul Lock? Sun Zifu gulped. Soul Lock is an extremely rare bloodline ability of the demon wolves. Based on smell, it can directly lock onto soul fluctuations. And once the demon wolf king uses Soul Lock, if it can't kill its prey, it will suffer a backlash. In other words, it will definitely kill us. Qin Yu's eyes were icy cold. Sun Zifu nodded. His body went cold, as if he had fallen into an icy lake. There was a moment of silence. This explained why the demon wolf pack was circling around here. Although the demon wolf king couldn't lock onto their exact position, it would definitely be able to find them if it searched a little. Qin Yu's eyes were icy cold. He couldn't wait any longer, otherwise once the demon wolf pack gathered together, it would be difficult to escape. Demon wolf pack. Demon wolf king, killing the former was impossible, so he could only kill the latter. Otherwise, even if he escaped here, he wouldn't be able to escape the demon wolf king's bloodline ability. Qin Yu suddenly stood up. Sun Zifu had a bad feeling. Fellow Daoist Yao, what do you want to do? Qin Yu lightly said, I want to kill the demon wolf king. Sun Zifu gulped. He thought that Qin Yu had gone crazy. Who didn't know that the demon wolf king was sinister and cunning? It would never face a powerful enemy alone. It hid itself in the wolf pack and had the most powerful demon wolf guard following it. Wanting to kill it was harder than ascending to the heavens. Fellow Daoist Yao, don't be impulsive. He rambled on and on. The general meaning was that the demon wolf king was too strong and it was impossible for him to kill it. Qin Yu had no expression. If I don't kill it, you and I will die. He strode forwards, stay here and wait for me to return. Before his voice fell, he had already vanished from sight. The dark cave fell completely silent. Sun Zifu inexplicably shivered. A thought suddenly popped up in his mind. Could it be that this surname Yao saw that things were going bad, so he threw me here as bait and fled? His body stiffened and his heart nearly stopped beating. Sun Zifu ran out of the cave, but all he saw was a pitch-black darkness. There wasn't even the slightest trace of Qin Yu. In the distance, the roars of demon wolves echoed in the air. Sun Zifu shivered and his lips trembled. After hesitating for a while, he slowly retreated back into the cave. Now, he could only choose to believe in Qin Yu. If he really entered the dark mountain forest alone, he feared he wouldn't be able to see tomorrow's sun. Surname Yao. Grandpa Yao. Ancestor Yao, you must keep your word, don't leave me here alone. In the dark night, Qin Yu's eyes shined with light. Everything around him was clearly reflected in his eyes. He was like a shadow, quietly moving forwards. At the same time, within his soul space, the cosmic Seacross bell gently trembled. A clear ringing sound spread out, as if it were some sort of accurate sound wave that spread out in all directions, covering an area of several hundred miles. Within this range, all soul fluctuations could be sensed. This was the terrifying aspect of the cosmic Seacross bell. As a supreme treasure of the soul, its might wasn't limited to protecting its master's soul. It could investigate, lock onto, and even kill its master's soul. In particular, after the golden soul of nothingness fused into it, it had activated all of the cosmic Seacross bell's abilities. For instance, its large-scale probing ability was one of them. The demon wolf king was tyrannically strong. After awakening its bloodline, its soul fluctuations far surpassed those of ordinary demon wolves. Thus, it might be difficult for others to find it, given how cunning it was. But to Qin Yu, the demon wolf king's soul fluctuations were like a campfire in the dark night. As long as it appeared within his probing range, he would be able to lock onto it. As he rushed forwards, Qin Yu stepped forwards and flew up into the branches of an ancient tree. All of his pores were sealed off, isolating the connection between inside and outside. He seemed to melt into the dark night. After several breaths of time, 6 demon wolves formed a small search team. They passed by the ancient tree, twitching their sensitive noses. Some of the demon wolves seemed to smell something. With a low roar, the 6 demon wolves scattered, but in the end they didn't find anything. Several times, the demon wolves swept their eyes over the ancient tree, but none of them discovered Qin Yu. When they ran away, Qin Yu was like a fallen leaf, quietly falling to the ground. He continued to move forwards in the direction he had chosen. The cosmic Seacross bell could search for several hundred miles, but to the boundless mountain forest, this was only an extremely small area. Thus, Qin Yu divided his search into 6 areas. Starting from a single point, he would go in 6 different directions. As long as his luck wasn't too bad, finding the demon wolf king was only a matter of time. He was like a ghost, avoiding the countless demon wolf squads as well as the other demon beasts of the night. The first time he didn't find anything. The second time was the same. The third time was the same. As Qin Yu was wondering whether or not the demon wolf king had some method to avoid him, the cosmic Seacross bell in his soul space suddenly trembled. A radiant sphere of light appeared within his range of perception. It was like a silver moon in the skies, sprinkling down an endless cold brilliance. Around this sphere of light, there were countless tiny motes of light. They were like stars on the edge of the silver moon, surrounding it with a majestic aura. Shua, Qin Yu came to a sudden stop. He looked up into the depths of the pitch-black mountain forest, a bolt of lightning flashing in his eyes. Demon Wolf King, I've found you. Indeed, as Sun Zifu had said, the Demon Wolf King was surrounded by the most powerful demon wolf guards. Their soul fluctuations were nearly twice as tyrannical as those of ordinary demon wolves. If he were to face them head-on, no matter how tyrannical Qin Yu's strength was, his chances of success were only 30%. And this was an optimistic estimate. The Demon Wolf King was surrounded by a pack of demon wolves and its true combat strength was terrifying. Moreover, once he appeared, the Demon Wolf King would immediately summon the rest of the wolf pack. If he couldn't finish this battle quickly, then that would truly be bad. Luckily, Qin Yu wasn't unprepared. Since he wanted to kill the Demon Wolf King, he naturally had his own plans. As long as his plan went smoothly, killing the Demon Wolf King wouldn't be too difficult. Qin Yu took a deep breath and restrained his aura fluctuations to the minimum. Then, he quietly crept towards the Demon Wolf King. This was the most critical moment. Once he was discovered ahead of time, all of his preparations would be for naught. As he thought, the sinister and cunning Demon Wolf King wouldn't leave any gaps for its enemies. Even though it was surrounded by a pack of wolves, it still made extremely tight defensive arrangements. If it weren't for Qin Yu borrowing the cosmic Seacross bell to avoid the moving demon wolf guards, it would have been impossible for him to approach within 10 miles of the Demon Wolf King. After spending less than an hour, Qin Yu arrived at a low hillside. His figure was hidden behind thistles and thorns, and he finally saw the silver-white Demon Wolf King that resembled a full moon. It was lying on a clean boulder, its long fur constantly fluttering in the night wind. There were over 100 strong and fierce demon wolf guards surrounding it. Suddenly, the Demon Wolf King, who was lying on the boulder, opened its eyes. Its eyes were cold and dense, like 2 deep and serene pools. It stood up and looked directly at Qin Yu. It roared out loud. A woo, the demon wolf guard's fur immediately stood on end. Its vicious eyes turned towards Qin Yu and its strong hind legs erupted with power. It rushed forwards like a bolt of lightning. He had been discovered. Qin Yu's heart chilled. This demon wolf king's strength was far more terrifying than he had imagined. Although this wasn't the best chance to attack, he had no other choice. If he missed this chance, he feared the demon wolf king wouldn't give him another chance to approach. Bang! Chapter 495. Black Demon Sect. Tai Chinchou's face was flushed red and he revealed a rare look of excitement. This was because the hidden dangers that had plagued his body for so many years were finally beginning to disappear. Although this was only the beginning, he understood his own condition. Everything was difficult at the beginning, and this was extremely appropriate to deal with the hidden dangers in his body. Without accident, in at most half a year he would be able to make a complete recovery. He would be able to cast off Qin Ku's shackles and obtain another chance to attack the Calamity Immortal Realm. Thinking of this, Tai Chinchou's smile widened. For my sect to resolve these hidden dangers, fellow Daoist has contributed greatly. If there is anything you need in the future, the Black Demon sect will not be stingy. His words contained the intent to recruit him. The more he came into contact with this mysterious character from the sealed pagoda, the more he discovered just how formidable he was. Although his aura wasn't strong, there were times when Tai Chinchou felt a great threat from him. Although he knew his chances weren't high, as long as there was a chance, Tai Chinchou wouldn't miss it. He wouldn't miss out on the chance to bring such a character under his command. The spirit of poison had a faint expression. Sect Master, today's treatment has ended. I bid my farewells. Recruit me, if you dare to have such thoughts, I won't agree. Just as he was about to leave, the spirit of poison's complexion changed and his footsteps quickened. Sect Master, I have an important matter that requires me to go into seclusion. Do not let anyone disturb me. Before his voice fell, his figure flashed around a corner and he vanished from sight. Soon, the spirit of poison returned to his dwelling and sat down cross-legged. Sealed Pagoda. Deep within the sea of poison, the slowly growing continent suddenly trembled. A volcano erupted and billowing toxic smoke shot into the skies. The spirit of the sealed pagoda lifted a hand. Space fluctuated and a hole appeared, allowing the toxic smoke to pass through and vanish from sight. The mountain top was low and both sides were fast enough. So, after several breaths of time, Qin Yu could clearly see the fierce fangs of the demon wolf guards and the white stench they exhaled from their mouths. Roar, roar, with cruel roars, the dozen-some demon wolf guards at the front had already leapt up from the ground. Behind them, the white demon wolf king stood atop a boulder. Its eyes were filled with anger and surprise. It hesitated for a moment before turning and jumping off the boulder. Under the protection of the remaining demon wolf guards, it began to retreat. At the same time, deep rumbling sounds erupted from the entire mountain forest. The scattered demon wolf packs had already received the demon wolf king's summons and were gathering here. Without accident, unless a calamity immortal took action, it was impossible to threaten the safety of the demon wolf king. Qin Yu wasn't at the Calamity Immortal Realm, but he had many hidden cards. For instance, the tyrannical poison immunity that the little blue lamp had given him. For instance, the sealed pagoda and the spirit of poison that he had subdued at the Black Demon sect not too long ago. Facing the demon wolf guard that jumped up, Qin Yu punched out his fist. Space collapsed, forming a giant hole. In the next moment, the surging poisonous smoke surged out like a tidal wave. The first to enter the range of the poisonous smoke was a demon wolf guard with black fur and a long scar on the corner of its left eye. The fact that it was able to rush to the front was enough to prove its strength. But the instant it came into contact with the poisonous smoke, the demon wolf guard's fierce eyes turned into pain and fear. Its glossy hair turned yellow and curled in the blink of an eye, as if it had been roasted on a bonfire. Its green, murderous eyes were like jelly under the scorching sun, melting and flowing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Woo! The demon wolf guard only had time to howl in pain. On the surface of its tongue, yellow spots began to appear and then it began to rot away. Its strong and powerful limbs seemed to have been pulled out of them. It fell to the ground, twitching several times before it was unable to crawl back up. After several breaths of time, all that was left over was a skeleton. All of its flesh and blood had turned into sticky goo that seeped into the earth. Soon after, a second and third demon wolf guards followed. Like dumplings, the smell of blood soared. The demon wolf guards that followed behind came to a sudden stop in panic. Their sharp claws tore open the ground, causing dust to splash into the air. When the dust fell on their bodies, they looked much more distressed. But the poisonous smoke didn't stop. It gushed out like a thick fog, expanding outwards at an astonishing speed. Roar! The demon wolf king roared in anger. The demon wolf guards that had stopped moving suddenly flashed with a fierce light as they suppressed their fear. With deep howls, they crazily rushed into the poisonous smoke like stones, carrying with them an aura as if they faced death unflinchingly. Unfortunately, even if these loyal and devoted demon wolf guards paid with their lives, they still weren't able to stop Qin Yu's footsteps. Within the poisonous smoke, runes quietly lit up on his right index finger, shining with a faint halo of light. All of the poisonous smoke that approached Qin Yu was completely transformed, losing its toxicity to him. But to anyone else besides him, it became even more terrifying. The ground was already covered with the rotting corpses of the demon wolf guards. As Qin Yu ran across the ground, it was like he was walking through mud. Flesh and blood splashed everywhere, and the stench made one feel dizzy and nauseous. But his complexion didn't change at all. He stubbornly stared at the enraged demon wolf king not too far away. The spirit of poison's strength was only at 10% of its peak, and the sealed pagoda also consumed an astonishing amount of energy to maintain this hole. Thus, the poisonous smoke attacks couldn't last for long and couldn't be repeated for a period of time. He had to finish this battle as soon as possible. Otherwise, once the demon wolf pack caught up, even if he used the corpses to pile up the poisonous smoke, he would still be able to use it up. At that time, facing the vengeful demon wolf king, Qin Yu would be in deep trouble. A sharp light flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. His feet trembled and flesh and blood flew everywhere as his speed rose once more. The demon wolf king revealed a look of fear. It had witnessed with its own eyes its most powerful guard rapidly die in the poisonous smoke. But this human, he was actually able to ignore the poisonous smoke as if it didn't exist. This was far too horrifying. It began to regret provoking these two humans. But the taste of their blood was far too delicious, it couldn't resist its desire. In particular, this human in front of it. If it could eat him, the demon wolf king believed it had a high chance of completing its bloodline advancement and breaking through to the commander level, becoming the second true king of this small world. But now, the demon wolf king realized that it might not have the chance to obtain this human's flesh and blood. It had to flee immediately, otherwise it feared it would suffer the same fate as its guard today. The demon wolf king deeply looked at Qin Yu and then roared out loud. A pair of silver wings unfurled from its back, shining with a brilliant light. To this human, the terrifying poisonous smoke was bound to have a great restrictive effect, otherwise he wouldn't have been chased around in such a distressed state. If it avoided today, it would still be the king of its tribe. If it led the wolf pack under its command, it might have a chance to make a comeback. Human, your flesh and blood, I will not give up. Shua, the demon wolf king fiercely flapped its wings and its body shot up into the sky like a sharp arrow. Flying was forbidden in this small world, but as a native demon beast, it wasn't subject to this restriction. Human, we will meet again soon. Within the poisonous smoke, Qin Yu looked up and stared at the silver light that shot into the skies. Since he had decided to attack today, he couldn't give the Demon Wolf King a chance to escape. The Sky Bloodline, today, it will be mine. Within his soul space, the quiet cosmic Seacross bell suddenly began to ring. Compared to the past, this sound was much sharper and more tyrannical. At almost the same time, the Demon Wolf King that had flown into the skies seemed to be struck by an invisible arrow. It roared in pain and tumbled to the ground. However, the tyrannical strength of a commander-level demon beast was soon manifested. When it was 100 meters from the ground, the Demon Wolf King regained control of its body. It fiercely unfurled its silver wings and flapped them to stabilize its body. Even so, it still crashed into the ground, leaving behind a terrifying pit. The poisonous smoke howled out like a raging dragon. The Demon Wolf King knew that the terrifying human was inside. It shook its dizzy head and roared as it leapt out of the pit, stubbornly staring at Qin Yu. After discovering that it couldn't escape, the Demon Wolf King's cruel and bloodthirsty demonic nature was thoroughly activated. You want to kill me? Let's see who dies first. It opened its mouth and roared. As this sound entered Qin Yu's ears, it reached deep into his soul. Chapter 496. The Demon Wolf King had awakened its bloodline talent, Soul Lock. This was an extremely strange and mysterious ability. It could select a wisp of the target's aura and condense a soul seed into its own soul. Once the soul was locked and the target was successfully killed, the soul seed could absorb 10% to 30% of the dead person's soul strength and fuse it into the Demon Wolf King's soul, causing its soul strength to rise. The soul seed could help the Demon Wolf King lock onto its target and even obtain the soul strength of the target after they died. But if the hunt failed, the soul seed would explode, creating a backlash that would damage the Demon Wolf King's soul. In addition, there was an even more extreme method, and that was to directly detonate the soul seed. The backlash the Demon Wolf King suffered would double, but this was also an extremely terrifying killing move. The soul seed was formed from the target's aura and resonated with the soul body's aura. Once the soul seed exploded, it would instantly pull the target's soul into the same frequency. There was only one result, and that was that the soul body and the soul seed would both collapse. This was the situation Qin Yu was facing right now. The Demon Wolf King felt an intense crisis. Its cruel demonic nature erupted and it chose to destroy itself. Although its soul would inevitably be severely injured, there was a high chance Qin Yu would be directly killed. Even if he didn't die, as long as his soul was heavily wounded and he fell into the Demon Wolf Pack, all that awaited him was death. At that time, it would eat his corpse and absorb his bloodline. Once the Demon Wolf King completed its bloodline advancement, the damage to its soul wouldn't be anything at all. Although this might affect its advancement to the King's Step, in the current situation, it had to make a gamble. If it were anyone else hunting down the Demon Wolf King today, then perhaps this ruthless method really might succeed. But unfortunately, the one it chose was Qin Yu. With the holy artifact of the souls of nothingness, the cosmic Seacross bell, there might be some strength in this world that could erase Qin Yu from the soul level, but that didn't include the Demon Wolf King. The cosmic Seacross bell trembled. Layers of ripples appeared, cleanly cancelling out all of the ripples in Qin Yu's soul space. All of the throbbing in his soul vanished like snow under the scorching sun. The Demon Wolf King's eyes widened as it stubbornly stared at Qin Yu. Its complexion paled and its body tensed up, but its eyes revealed endless excitement. Humanity. You forced me to pay a great price and even hindered my advancement to the King's Step. Then I will use your blood to extinguish my anger. Shua. Even though the White Demon Wolf King's soul was severely damaged, its speed was still astonishing. It hurtled towards Qin Yu like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, a pair of silvery white wings appeared once more. As they flapped, a gust of wind rose. Perhaps it was because the owner of the wings was on the brink of death, but the wind was easily blown away. The demon wolf king's eyes lit up with even greater joy. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Qin Yu and opened its massive mouth, causing it to expand over a dozen times in size as if it were about to swallow him whole. Although it enjoyed chewing and swallowing slowly, the demon wolf king still felt a bit of fear towards this human in front of it. It was better to seal the coffin early and eat this human into its stomach. That was the only way to be safe. Gulp, the demon wolf king let out a satisfied burp, a trace of confusion in its eyes. This was because its swallowing had been too smooth. It had only just opened its mouth when this human had taken the initiative to jump in. Taking the initiative, the demon wolf king's body stiffened and a trace of fear appeared in its eyes. It growled and its abdomen began to wriggle, emitting a deep rumble that sounded like thunder. This was one of its abilities. It stimulated the power of its stomach, squirming and twisting to kill its prey, quickly decomposing and absorbing it. But this time, just as its stomach began to wriggle, the demon wolf king howled in pain. It felt as if there was an incomparably hard iron stone in its stomach. In the darkness, Qin Yu opened his eyes. Two bolts of lightning seemed to cut through space. He lifted a hand and a halo of silver light revolved. As it fell, blood gushed out like a tide. Warm and slightly fishy blood that contained boundless demonic strength instantly drenched Qin Yu's body. But in the next moment, it was cleanly absorbed. He was like a sponge, not missing a single drop of blood that flowed out from the demon wolf king's body. At the same time, Qin Yu did it a second time, a third time, a fourth time. He lifted his hand and brought it down. More and more wounds appeared. Blood fell like rain. A tyrannical commander-level demon beast had an extremely thick blood vitality within its body. If the demon wolf king were to completely drain its blood, it would be enough to fill an entire lake. Qin Yu didn't miss a single drop of blood because he didn't want to waste the pure demonic strength contained within it. At this time, as he absorbed the blood, he could clearly feel the demonic bloodline in his body emitting excited cheers as it rose at a clear speed. In truth, this feeling was quite good. As Qin Yu subconsciously smiled, the demon head that reappeared behind him also smiled. The demon wolf king crazily rolled around on the ground. Dozens of large trees were destroyed and there wasn't a single inch of land left intact. The surviving demon wolf guards retreated in terror. The two that had just approached the demon wolf king had already been torn to shreds on the spot. The demon wolf guards didn't have enough intelligence to understand just what was happening. They only knew that their leader was in a berserk state and they absolutely couldn't approach it. But the demon wolf king was well aware that it wouldn't be able to last much longer before it was sucked dry by the human in its stomach and turned into a dried corpse. The smell of death was so rich that black spots began to appear in the demon wolf king's eyes. Its powerful limbs began to feel sore and weak. It knew that it was about to die. Resentment and unwillingness erupted like a volcano, burning its heart and releasing all of the demon wolf king's negative emotions. Kill me, plunder me, throw me into the endless abyss. I, the noble demon wolf king, a life form with pure demon blood flowing through my body, will never accept such an ending. Let's die together. Bang! Terrifying blood energy fluctuations erupted from the demon wolf king's body. Its eyes turned crimson. This was the result of its tiny blood vessels bursting with blood. Faint beads of blood drilled out from its pores. In the blink of an eye, its snow-white fur was dyed red. But at this time, there was a fierce pain in the depths of its mind. It was like an iron rod had been thrust into it and was madly stirred. At the same time, a marvelous strength descended from the heavens, seeping into the demon wolf king's body. In the blink of an eye, the demon wolf king's self-detonation process was forcefully interrupted. It slumped to the ground as if its spine had been pulled out. Its nose and mouth emitted heavy sounds, like a broken bellows. The demon wolf king was powerless to resist. Its majestic face was filled with pain. Its strong and majestic body constantly twitched and twitched. It withered up at a speed visible to the naked eye, and its breathing became increasingly difficult. Saliva dripped out of its mouth and wet the ground. The solemn commander-level demon wolf king, a terrifying existence in this small world that could rank in the top 5, was now approaching the final moments of its life. The demon wolf guards revealed panic-stricken expressions. They could clearly feel their leader's life aura weakening, but they didn't know how to respond. As for the surrounding wolf packs, after losing the suppression of the demon wolf king's aura, they gradually fell into chaos. There were even some demon wolves that began to howl and tear each other apart. An hour later, there was a deep sound of skin being cut. Qin Yu stepped out from the withered demon wolf king's abdomen. His figure was exposed in front of the wolf pack. All of the demon wolves drew back, reared their heads back, roared into the skies, and then turned to run away. Qin Yu's body had the rich aura of the demon wolf king. They didn't dare to be presumptuous. As he watched the wolf pack leave, Qin Yu had a thoughtful look on his face. Before the new demon wolf king was born, this powerful demon beast tribe would inevitably fall into desolation. Chapter 497. Qin Yu looked up into the skies. Inexplicably, the image of the giant demon head above the demon ascension gate appeared in his mind. Was it related to this? Thinking about it again and again, Qin Yu suppressed these tumbling thoughts. He turned and stepped forwards, 2 silver wings of light appearing behind him. The silver wings flapped and his figure flashed like lightning, vanishing without a trace in the blink of an eye. This was the sky bloodline that the demon wolf king had revealed before. Now, it had finally fallen into his hands. Sun Zifu's face was as white as paper and his body shook like a sieve. He covered his mouth, not daring to make a single sound. Surname Yao, you bastard. After such a long time had passed without any movement, he became increasingly certain that he had been abandoned. This surname Yao was using him as bait in exchange for a chance to live. He pitied himself for being too naive to actually believe his nonsense. Killing the demon wolf king, why don't you just ascend to the heavens? Regret filled his heart. Sun Zifu clenched his teeth. If the heavens gave him a chance to start all over again, he swore he would grab onto Yao Bin's thigh. Throw him away. Dream on. Suddenly, there was a slight movement coming from the cave entrance. The alarmed Sun Zifu stiffened. His eyes widened and sweat streamed down his face. Hoo, there was a heavy panting sound, sending a faint smell into the cave. Sun Zifu's face turned green. He swore that he hadn't smelled wrong, this was the smell of demon wolves. They had found him. Surname Yao, you bastard, even if I die, even if I become a ghost, I won't let you go. Mommy, I don't want to be bitten to death and eaten by wolves. I don't want to. Sun Zifu's legs heated up and his mind went blank. He thought to himself that his life was over. Originally, the cave's smell was able to conceal him a little, but now that it was hot, it was hard not to be discovered. As expected, the demon wolves roared from the cave entrance, as well as the faint sound of their sharp teeth grinding against each other. Whoosh, whoosh, there was the sound of breaking air. Sun Zifu looked up in distress, his eyes meeting the demon wolf's green eyes. At this moment, he actually forgot to resist. Just as Sun Zifu was about to be buried in the belly of the wolf, an inaudible sound wave spread into the cave. The demon wolf turned and ran, not caring about the flesh and blood in its mouth at all. Woo! After a few wolf howls, the cave became quiet again. Sun Zifu, who was waiting for his death in fear, was at a loss. He had no idea what had happened. Gone, Exhaling, Sun Zifu's legs went limp, and he fell to the ground. He couldn't care less about the wet stench between his legs. His chest heaved up and down as he coughed. He choked on his own saliva. I'm still alive, I'm still fucking alive. Could it be that these demon wolves were blown away by this young master's heat wave? Although it didn't make sense, it seemed to be the only explanation. I really didn't think that this young master's boiling hot current would actually have such a powerful might. Could it be that I've awakened some kind of powerful bloodline that I don't even know about? His brain seemed to lack oxygen, and his thoughts ran wild. He didn't know where he had wandered off to. Just as young Master Sun was lost in his thoughts, he suddenly jolted awake. There was movement at the entrance of the cave again. Could it be that the demon wolf had returned? Young Master Sun really wanted to backhand and slap himself twice. You idiot! You didn't have such a good opportunity to run away and actually stayed here in a daze. The demon wolf had clearly left, so why would it return? Could it be that the heat flow had turned cold? Just as young Master Sun was wondering if he would be able to make it in time to unleash another attack, a faint voice rang out. You can come out now. Sun Zifu was stunned. The next moment, he burst into tears. Even though his thoughts were all over the place, he knew that it was only now that he was truly safe. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. Although he was a bit impatient, he still turned around and left to give the old man some time to vent. Fortunately, before he could run out of patience, he heard footsteps behind him. Young Master Sun, who had changed into a new set of robes, had a hesitant expression on his face. Qin Yu lightly said, "It's too dark. I didn't see anything." Young Master Sun's face stiffened. If you say that, doesn't that mean you've seen everything? He wanted to cry but no tears came out. Luckily, Qin Yu now had some credibility in his heart. He could only hope that Qin Yu could keep his mouth shut, otherwise how would he have the face to see others in the future? Qin Yu turned and walked away. Young Master Sun didn't have time to think about anything else. He quickly followed after him. In the dark night of the mountain forest, there was only the sound of the two people's footsteps. The night wind blew past, stirring up the branches and leaves, emitting a light rustling sound. Besides that, there was no other sound. All traces of the demon wolf pack had completely vanished. Sun Zifu looked at the tall and straight back in front of him. Although he wasn't too tall, in his eyes, he was like a mountain that pierced into the heavens. Although he didn't know what happened, the demon wolf king should have died, right? It was clear that if the demon wolf king hadn't died, it would have been impossible for them to walk through here so easily. He couldn't help but suck in a deep breath. Demon Wolf King, this was the Demon Wolf King. He originally thought that he had already thought highly of this surname Yao, but now it seemed that he really was hiding his strength. Perhaps if he followed by his side, he really could leave this place. Thinking of this, a bright light flashed in Sun Zifu's eyes. As he looked at Qin Yu's back, his expression changed a bit. For the next 2 days, whenever Sun Zifu faced Qin Yu, he couldn't help but think of his own embarrassing situation and reveal a bit of awkwardness. But Qin Yu's nonchalant attitude comforted him. Unconsciously, he trusted him even more. On the 4th day, the two of them finally encountered other cultivators. Unfortunately, they were only 2 incomplete corpses. After looking around, they determined that they had been hunted down and eaten by demon beasts. Sun Zifu's complexion paled. When it was time to rest at night, he slowly moved over to Qin Yu's side. Seeing that there wasn't any response, he relaxed and soon fell asleep. Under the curtain of night, demon beasts were much more active than during the day. They could even obtain a certain degree of strength. In a situation where he wasn't sure when he would be able to leave, even Qin Yu tried his best to avoid hurrying through the night. He had already consumed too much of the strength of the sealed pagoda and the spirit of poison. It was impossible for him to repeat the poison attack he used to kill the demon wolf king, so he naturally had to be more careful. Sun Zifu woke up from his deep sleep. He instinctively panicked, but as he saw the black-robed figure not too far away, he inexplicably calmed down. Just as he was about to greet him, his complexion suddenly changed. He flipped his hand and took out a stone. As he looked at the black light that flashed on its surface like it was breathing, he revealed a look of ecstasy. "Fellow Daoist Yao, we're saved. We're saved." After a series of explanations, Qin Yu finally understood the origin of this stone. This was a watchstone that only a cultivator from the demonic path with a deep background could possess. Its effect was that after entering the Demon Ascension Gate small world, once one encountered trouble, they could call out to each other and gather together. With everyone's combined strength, the degree of danger would be reduced to the minimum. Chapter 498. Of course, activating the watchstone required certain conditions. At the very least, young Master Sun couldn't do it. Now, the surface of the watchstone was flashing with black light, indicating that someone had successfully activated the summoning. In the current situation, if everyone could gather together, it would naturally be better than fighting alone. Furthermore, those who possessed the Guardian Stone were not easy to deal with. Only by being together with the strong would they be able to live longer. It was precisely because of this that young Master Sun was overjoyed. "Fellow Daoist Yao, let's hurry over. Perhaps they've already figured out what happened here." Qin Yu's eyes flashed and he slowly nodded. Sun Zifu was right about this. Even though there was no danger at the moment, these people might have a way to leave the small world. After determining the direction, the two of them immediately set off. The lone peak was like a sword piercing the heavens, filled with baleful aura. The air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. Countless demonic beast corpses nearly buried the foot of the mountain. Pairs of cruel and cold eyes stared at the mountain peak, but none of the demonic beasts dared to charge forward again. It was because all those who had rushed over had already turned into corpses, their bodies soaked in hot blood. At the peak of the mountain, there were several tents set up. There was a certain distance between them, and they exuded indifference and vigilance. Zhuolangyue clasped his hands behind his back, a look of praise in his eyes. Brother Su's slaughtering demon array is truly tyrannical. It can actually absorb demonic blood and demonic strength for its own use. The more it kills, the stronger it becomes. Su Guzi had a light expression. "It's just a minor trick." Seeing that he wasn't willing to talk too much, Zhuolangyue smiled and didn't mind. "You and I intentionally waited a few days before summoning. Those that could rush here must have some strength." Su Guzi was silent for a moment. "What you and I are doing is fraught with danger. If one's strength isn't enough, then all that awaits them is death." Zhuolangyue smiled and nodded. His gaze fell to the base of the mountain where a large number of magical beasts were gathered. This was the final test. Only by passing would one have the qualifications to join them and fight for that great fortune. Watchstone. Watch and help each other. In this world, only people of the same level could help each other, right? We're here. We've arrived. It's right in front. Sun Zifu was overjoyed and was about to rush out. But just as he moved, he was caught. Qin Yu was expressionless, but his eyes were dignified. What happened? Sun Zifu's heart skipped a beat. During their time together, he had already experienced Qin Yu's methods. There are magical beasts ahead. He paused for a moment, then continued, "Many magical beasts." Sun Zifu was dumbfounded and murmured, "How could this be? The rendezvous point is clearly here, I can't be mistaken." He took out the Guardian Stone. The black light on its surface was dense and the frequency of its flickering was astonishing. Sun Zifu probed with his spiritual will and raised his head blankly. This was it. Qin Yu faintly frowned. Then, a thoughtful look flashed in his eyes. It seemed that the cultivator who opened the watchstone hoped to borrow the strength of the demon beasts to test those who came. He wasn't dissatisfied because of this. Instead, he felt a bit of anticipation. This was because the more the person who opened this place valued strength, the more likely it was that they knew the cause of this change. Otherwise, why would there be a need to eliminate those with insufficient strength? To put it bluntly, it was good to use them as cannon fodder. The biggest possibility was that they didn't want a share of the loot. A sharp light flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. He informed Sun Zifu of his judgment. After a moment of silence, his complexion darkened. Sun Zifu wasn't an idiot. It was just that he was too excited and hadn't considered too much. Now that he was reminded by Qin Yu, he immediately responded. Fellow Daoist Yao is right. This is indeed a test. If we can't pass it, even if we are buried in the stomachs of demon beasts, no one will help us. Watchstone. An extremely low curse was uttered at the end. Qin Yu had an indifferent expression. But Yao Bin's reaction was exactly what he wanted. This was because once everyone smoothly gathered, Yao Bin's reliance on him would be greatly reduced. Burying a thorn between Yao Bin and these people was the best choice for Qin Yu. Follow me closely. Qin Yu took a deep breath. His bones crackled and his blood roared like a raging river. Sun Zifu quickly nodded. He didn't know how many demon beasts were up ahead, but from Qin Yu's complexion, he knew it wouldn't be easy to pass. Suddenly, Qin Yu frowned. A divine light flashed in his eyes and he restrained the volcanic aura within him. Wait a moment. There is someone more anxious than us. Perhaps we can save some strength. Just as his voice fell, there was a loud explosion from another direction on the lonely mountain peak. Light illuminated the skies and the cruel roars of demon beasts echoed through the world. Sun Zifu deeply looked at Qin Yu, shock deep in his eyes. They were so far away, so how had he discovered that someone was about to rush into the mountain peak? At this moment, Qin Yu's figure became even more formidable and mysterious in his heart. Surrounded by demon beasts, Zhou Fenghuang bit her lips and followed behind the tall youth. This person had iron fists and iron legs. Demonic energy surged as he waved his hands and all the demon beasts that rushed at him were sent flying away. A resonant bird cry sounded out. Dressed in a blue pleated skirt, Mu Qingwan appeared. Blue flames ignited in her hands. Together with law formulas, they fell down, forming a rain of fire that filled the skies. The blue flames were shockingly hot. As they fell to the ground, they didn't extinguish. Instead, they burned holes of varying depths into the earth. Beside Mu Qingwan was a handsome man holding a sword. He wore a scholarly white robe and stood atop an astral sword that swam like a dragon. The brilliant sword light didn't reveal a single drop as it protected everyone within it. If one looked carefully, they would discover that there were massive shadows interweaving beneath their feet. They were like black vines that constantly tripped over or tied up demon beasts. Although they couldn't cause any substantial damage to them, they still greatly reduced the pressure on the four people. This was Zhou Fenghuang's shadow ability. The four of them had a tacit understanding of each other. It was clear that they had experienced countless battles. Even though they broke into the demon beast horde, although it seemed like there were dangers everywhere, the truth was that they were as steady as a mountain. On the mountain peak, Su Guzi had a light expression. These four have hidden themselves quite deeply. It looks like they're struggling, but none of them are using their true abilities. Isn't that even better? What you and I want are powerful companions. If they are trash, then what does it matter if there are thousands or tens of thousands of them? They are nothing but fertilizer. Zhuolanjue's eyes sparkled. He smiled brightly. Zhou Fenghuang and Mu Qinghuan are the rumored proud daughters of heaven of the demonic path. They have separately awakened the Black Phoenix and Blue Luan bloodlines. Seeing them today, they truly live up to their reputation. Su Guzi's eyes flashed. If fellow Daoist Zhua is interested, I can speak on your behalf. Whether it is the Zhou family or the Mu family, they will be happy to accept you. Zhuolanjue shook his head. There is no need for Brother Su to trouble me. If I really am interested, I will speak on your behalf. At this time, his complexion suddenly changed. He muttered, "Interesting, this is really interesting. I never thought that someone would pick up such a great bargain." As the person who laid down the array formation, Su Guzi had already sensed something. His eyes swept past the four people that were about to break through the demon beast's encirclement and fell onto another direction. Two figures, as fast as lightning, were moving forward rapidly. Currently, the vast majority of the monster beasts at the base of the mountain had been drawn away by the four people rushing up the mountain. These two people could be said to have a smooth path without encountering any obstacles. Su Guzi furrowed his eyebrows. This didn't conform to his original intentions. But as he thought about how there was that fiendish demon from the Dong family among the four people rushing up the mountain, he immediately relaxed. Picking up a bargain to climb up the mountain was a good idea and the timing was also good. But, he feared that if they climbed up the mountain, the result would be even worse. Su Guzi's complexion changed. He turned to look at his companion who had always been deep in thought. At this moment, there seemed to be something wrong with him. Fellow Daoists one knows them. Zhuolanjue let out a light breath. What a coincidence. I have met both of them before, and one of them has left a deep impression on me. Yao Bin, you probably never thought that you and I would meet here. Chapter 499. Pa, the ground caved in and several small cracks appeared. After counteracting the impact strength, Qinyu stopped and released Sun Zifu's hand. Sweeping his gaze across the surroundings, a grave expression appeared on his face. There was an extremely powerful formation set up at the foot of the mountain. Fortunately, it was only targeted at demonic beasts and did not obstruct them. Otherwise, it would not have been easy for them to barge in. At this time, Qinyu suddenly sensed something. He slowly looked up towards the summit. The lone peak was straight and did not have much cover. The two pairs of eyes met in midair. Left Lanue. Qinyu frowned for a moment before composing himself. With his current cultivation, while he couldn't say that he could rampage through this small world without fear, at least he didn't need to look at others' faces. Although Zhuolanjue wasn't weak, if he really were to become enemies with him, Qinyu was confident that he would be the one to survive until the end. At the peak of the mountain, Su Guzi was expressionless. Fellow Daoist Zhua, this old friend of yours is quite extraordinary. Zhuolanjue smiled. He does have a bit of strength, but seeing is believing. If we wait a bit longer, we'll naturally know. Su Guzi's eyes flashed. Zhuolanjue seemed to have a deep understanding of the demonic path. It seemed that fellow Daoist Zhua, who was born as a wandering cultivator, also had some secrets. But soon, Su Guzi suppressed these thoughts. To be able to stand out amongst countless peers and become a proud son of heaven, besides their own talent, who didn't have their own lucky chances and good fortune. Secrets and whatnot were commonplace in the human world. At the foot of the mountain, young Master Sun was in a daze. He hadn't expected things to go so smoothly. He had charged through the horde of magical beasts. When he recovered his wits, he was all smiles. Yao Bin's methods were truly good. He had only waited for a short while, but he had already passed the test effortlessly. Unconsciously, young Master Sun felt even more admiration for him. Xiao Chen looked into the distance, where demonic beasts were roaring. He revealed a pleased look in his eyes. They were just a group of people. So what if they were powerful? In the end, he still obediently became our vanguard. But in the end, they were the ones who took advantage of the situation. They might have to work together in the future, so it was best not to leave any grudges between them. Fellow Daoist Yao, when I appear, I will express my gratitude to them so that we don't get along any more awkwardly. Qin Yu looked away and nodded, not saying much. Sun Zifu was puzzled. What's wrong? Qin Yu lightly said, I met an acquaintance. Without waiting for the two of them to say anything, the four-man team that had attracted all the demonic beasts' firepower finally broke out of the encirclement and entered the formation area at the foot of the mountain. The violent and unwilling demonic beasts finally retreated after several of them were killed by the power of the formation. Sun Zifu's eyes brightened. Little sister Zhou. He strode forwards to greet her. Ha, little sister, I never thought that we would be so fated to meet here. Zhou Fenghuang's eyes turned towards him, a look of pleasant surprise in her eyes. Then, she panicked. Brother Sun, hurry and dodge. Sun Zifu was slightly stunned, not understanding what was going on. In the next moment, a roar resounded in his ears. Caught off guard, the rolling sound waves caused his ears to ring. Indistinctly, he saw a fist whizzing toward him. Young Master Sun shuddered, and his clothes were instantly drenched in cold sweat. Even if he didn't die from this punch, it was inevitable that he would be disfigured with a broken nose and sunken mouth. Just as young Master Sun's handsome and pale face was about to come into close contact with the iron bone fist, a hand grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back, allowing him to dodge. Qin Yu stepped forwards. His aura sank as he punched out. Bang! It was like two giant beasts colliding. Shockwaves billowed out, tearing apart the ground and stirring up endless amounts of dust. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. He grabbed onto Sun Zifu and took several steps back, each step leaving behind a deep footprint in the ground. Across from him, the person who had punched out had his toes touching the ground. Like an iron plow, he tore open a long and ugly scar in the ground. From the looks of it, both sides were evenly matched. Dong Hanju's eyes became even more cruel. He roared out loud and forcefully stopped himself. He took a step forwards and his entire body was like a boulder that flew out from the summit of a mountain. But this time, as he was in midair, a shadow drilled out from the ground, turning into a net that wrapped around his body. Dong Hanju shook his arms and the blood energy in his body roared like a beast. The shadow net broke apart and he turned his head, an angry expression on his face. Miss Zhou, why did you stop me? Zhou Fenghuang bowed and explained, Brother Dong, please don't be angry. Today we are all family, so there is no need to harm our friendship. As she spoke, she swept her eyes over Qin Yu, a trace of caution in her eyes. Dong Hanju's mortal body was tyrannical and his strength was unfathomably deep. That hateful punch just now had been filled with killing intent, but it had actually been easily blocked. This Yao Bin couldn't be underestimated. Sun Zifu regained his composure. He immediately flew into a rage. You bastard! Do you know who I am? You actually dared to attack me so ruthlessly. This matter will not end here. Dong Hanju diabolically grinned. Then you and I will settle the score today. Zhou Fenghuang panicked. Brother Dong. She ruthlessly glared at Sun Zifu. This person comes from the Shadow Mountain Dong family. Brother Sun should have been more friendly with him. Sun Zifu shivered. He looked at Dong Hanju with a bit of fear in his eyes. The Shadow Mountain Dong family, for Zhou Fenghuang to be so careful with them, and for them to have such strength, shit. It was that vicious and evil monster. At this moment, Sun Zifu wanted to cry. How come he had provoked such a great trouble for no reason at all? Within the demonic path, as long as one had some status or background, who didn't know that the Shadow Mountain Dong family had produced an extraordinary junior, Dong Hanju. His name was elegant, but the truth was that this young Master Dong had truly descended into the world with a precious pearl in his mouth. On that day, divine light had illuminated the skies, clearly visible for 10,000 miles. With the assistance of a heaven-bestowed treasure, Dong Hanju's cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. He had even awakened the yin erosion bloodline of the Dong family's ancestors. This was a Coldine attribute demonic path bloodline, but Dong Hanju had forcefully refined it into an incomparably cruel and brutal path. Moreover, he was extremely fierce and rarely had a worthy opponent amongst the younger generation. He was one of the most famous proud sons of heaven within the demonic path. It was rumored that within the demonic path, there was an extremely senior highest elder who had secretly chosen him as a disciple. As long as he passed through the demon ascension gate, he would be formally accepted as a disciple. This sort of person had a great background, had a great talent, and was destined to be unexcelled in the world in the future. Just who was willing to provoke him? Moreover, everyone in the world knew that this Dong Hanju was envied for his talent and that he was born with a screw loose in his head. It was common for him to start a fight at the slightest disagreement. In these past years, there had been countless demonic path juniors that had been broken by him, but even now, nothing had happened to him. Zhou Fenghuang felt a bit of disdain in her heart. She could see that young Master Dong had restrained his arrogance and relaxed. Brother Dong, you and I only gave them a lift. There's no need to haggle over this. Dong Hanju's eyes were cold. He swept his eyes over Sun Zifu's shrinking back and curled his lips in disdain. Then, his eyes fell onto Qin Yu. He licked his lips, his eyes blazing. You're quite strong. Let's fight. If you don't die here, then I can forget about you using us as spears. Qin Yu didn't know who Dong Hanju was. He was already disgusted by the fact that Dong Hanju had suddenly attacked him. He had spent a great deal of effort to bring Sun Zifu here. If Sun Zifu were to be killed by a single punch, wouldn't all his efforts have been for naught? He coldly sneered. Although he didn't say anything, his attitude was clear. As for Zhuolanue, who was coveting the stone, Qin Yu didn't believe that Dong Hanju would really fight him in a life or death battle. As long as he revealed a corresponding level of strength, this seemingly reckless and ruthless fellow would naturally retreat. After all, the small world was experiencing great changes and there were many dangers everywhere. To fight a life or death battle over such a minor matter was a very stupid thing to do. Dong Hanju wasn't an idiot, otherwise he wouldn't have lived to this day. In the end, what he relied on was his own strength. Thus, young Master Sun's cowering arrogance was completely gone. Qin Yu coldly responded without fear. Zhou Fenghuang revealed a look of surprise. She didn't know if Qin Yu was fearless because he was ignorant or if he truly wasn't afraid. However, this display of bearing was in stark contrast to young Master Sun's. There was a bit more appreciation in her eyes. Of course, this appreciation didn't have any practical meaning. If she could obtain that strange stone in Qin Yu's hands, she wouldn't mind personally twisting his neck. Zhuolanue was worth recruiting. Compared to him, a Blue Sea Realm powerhouse that was over 100 years old had limited appeal to the dignified Zhou family. Dong Hanju diabolically grinned and stepped forwards. His aura tumbled around him, distorting space. He was like a demon god descending, his slaughter energy truly astonishing. He lifted his hand and billowing demonic energy followed. Fierce demonic heads appeared, all of them rearing their heads back and roaring at the heavens. Qin Yu was expressionless. He lifted a hand and pointed forwards. Strong winds rose up and the clouds in the skies tumbled. Boundless blue transformation, boundless blue chaos. The world fell silent. Time and space seemed to come to a standstill. 1/100th of a breath of time seemed to stretch to infinity. Then, there was a loud rumbling that shook the heavens and earth. The demonic heads trembled and collapsed. The demonic energy that gushed out from the void was like white frost dispersing under the scorching sun. A single finger fell and all supernatural powers ceased. Dong Hanju furrowed his eyebrows. He suppressed the tumbling blood energy in his chest and his eyes began to turn bloodshot. Amidst his ruthlessness, he gave off a calm feeling. But at this time, before he could do anything, 2 figures arrived from the summit of a lonely mountain peak. Su Guzi loudly said, "Fellow Daoist Dong, please calm your anger." Zuolanue was expressionless. But as he swept his eyes over Qin Yu, there was a bit more fluctuation in them. It was unknown what he was thinking. Dong Hanju looked up. "Su Guzi, give me a reason not to attack." Su Guzi was silent for a moment. "The ancient tree monster has awakened." The space fell deathly silent. Everyone, including Dong Hanju, wore shocked expressions on their faces. Mu Qinghuan paled. Impossible. During the opening of the Demon Ascension Gate, the ancient tree monster will be suppressed by the entire small world, so how could it possibly awaken? Zuolanua lightly said, "Everyone might find this hard to accept, but this is the truth." He turned around. "Brother Su, take out the evidence so that fellow Taoists can take a look." Su Guzi nodded. With a flick of his sleeve, light flashed and a tree root fell to the ground. Its entire body was crimson red. As it touched the ground, it suddenly revived and drilled deep into the earth. Humph! Su Guzi stepped forwards. The ground tumbled and the tree root was shaken away. The tree root twisted, forming a face that howled at the crowd. A faint stabbing pain shot into Su Guzi's brain. He reached out a hand and grasped it. The tree root froze in midair before immediately breaking into powder. His dignified eyes swept over everyone. "Everyone here is extraordinary. Before entering the small world, you should have been informed of some information regarding the ancient tree monster. Do you think that if it hadn't awakened and sent an avatar to hunt us down, I would have been able to obtain this tree root?" Mu Qinghuan's lips moved as if she wanted to argue, but in the end she didn't say anything. Qin Yu instantly thought of something. The tree monster he killed before, could it have been an avatar of the ancient tree monster? But just what was this ancient tree monster? It actually made everyone feel as if their parents had died. It had to be known that they could be called the most outstanding disciples of this generation of demonic path disciples. Each one of them possessed unfathomably deep strength. Unless it was a calamity immortal realm existence, if they joined forces there was nothing to fear. Qin Yu's heart shrank. Could it be that the ancient tree monster was at the calamity immortal realm? His lips moved and he hurriedly sent a sound transmission to Sun Zifu, asking him about it. Only after calling out young Master Sun twice did he barely manage to regain his composure. He still had a dazed expression on his face. From his sound transmission, Qin Yu gained an approximate understanding of the ancient tree monster. In simpler terms, this tree monster was the foundation of the Demon Ascension Gate's small world. It was indeed at the Calamity Immortal Realm. A long time ago, there was a supreme elder of the demonic path who discovered a crack in the world. This crack was connected to an unknown demonic domain. Although it was impossible for cultivators to enter or leave, pure demonic energy was constantly transmitted over, giving birth to a massive number of tyrannical demon beasts with demonic blood in their bodies. And to the demonic path, demonic blood was the most precious thing. In order to occupy this crack in the world, the immortal and demonic paths fought for 1,000 years. Finally, the demonic path exhausted all of their methods and created an independent small world, completely taking it for themselves. In the past, when they were creating this small world, there was a supreme demonic path existence that took action. They cast down a giant tree from the heavens, using its roots as a support and its trunk as a support. The crown of the tree reached into the heavens, solidifying the foundation of this vanished world. This giant tree was the ancient tree monster. It came from the extreme north, the snowy region. The land of divinity and demons was vast and boundless. The 7 great empires spanned across the skies and seas, but this wasn't the entire territory of the land of divinity and demons. To the north of the Qin and Zhao borders was an extremely cold land. Snow fell all year round, and there were few clear days. There was also an icy cold energy that wreaked havoc everywhere. Unless it was an external force that could resist it, even cultivators weren't willing to step into it. This was a land that had been forgotten by the world. This was the land where the monster race struggled to survive. The ancient tree monster itself was a monster emperor of the monster race. It was hunted down by a supreme elder of the demonic path and suppressed here. Monster Emperor, Qin Yu's heart shook. He took a deep breath and barely managed to suppress his tumbling heart. Luckily, this monster emperor had already been killed. What was left of its main body was only its instincts. Moreover, its main body had been suppressed by the small world. Even if it were to awaken now, its strength would be greatly reduced. Otherwise, it would have been easy to kill them. It wouldn't have allowed them to live to this day. Dong Hanju's blood-red eyes faded. He coldly said, "I will forgive you for today." He looked up. Su Guzi, you didn't hesitate to sacrifice yourself to open the watchstone. Then, tell us your plans. Su Guzi's expression was light. It's simple. The reason I gathered everyone here today is because I hope that we can combine our strength to hunt down the ancient tree monster. Sun Zifu lost his voice and roared out, "How is that possible?" Everyone else's eyes widened. Although they didn't speak, their attitudes were clear. Chapter 500. As everyone was silent, Zhuolangyue slowly said, "The ancient tree monster is indeed terrifying, but right now it is only a remnant body and it is also suppressed by the small world. Its strength is less than 1/10 of its peak. If you and I join forces, we might have a chance to kill it. Of course, this matter is of great importance, so it's normal for you all to hesitate. We will also be waiting for a friend here. Please consider this carefully and make your decision tomorrow." Su Guzi nodded, not saying anything more. He turned with Zhuolangyue and returned to the campsite at the summit. Beside Mu Qinghuan was the sword-wielding youth. At this time, he was whispering several words into her ear, as if he were comforting her. Her complexion improved. She nodded and the two of them turned to leave. Although they had traveled together, that was only to protect themselves in a dangerous situation. They weren't truly close. Now that they had arrived at a temporary safe place, their relationship naturally appeared. Dong Hanju glanced at Qin Yu and walked away. Zhou Fenghuang said in a low voice, "Brother Dong, I will go and pay my respects." Dong Hanju didn't look back. He waved his hand and soon vanished from sight. Sun Zifu relaxed a little. Then, he awkwardly smiled and said, "I've let Sister Zhou see a joke." Zhou Fenghuang had a warm expression. A wise man submits to the circumstances. Brother Sun knows when to yield and when to stand tall. There is no need to care too much about this. This attitude warmed Sun Zifu's heart and made him feel as if he understood her. This was Dong Hanju. Damn it, who would dare to provoke him? He didn't dare to. This little sister Zhou is such a good person, she understands my heart, Zhou Fenghuang smiled. That's enough. This was just a misunderstanding. We can find a chance in the future to resolve it. Her eyes flashed. Brother Sun, I have some words I would like to speak with you in private. I wonder if Brother Sun can come with me. Sun Zifu hesitated for a moment. He looked over. Qin Yu lightly said, Fellow Daoist son, do not forget our agreement. He turned and left. Zhou Fenghuang frowned. Brother Sun, why are you walking together with this person? In this small world, this person will bring about a great deal of trouble. For some reason, as Sun Zifu listened to these words that seemed like advice, he felt a bit uncomfortable. He smiled. The situation forced me, so there was nothing I could do. Subconsciously, he didn't speak to Zhou Fenghuang about his experiences with Qin Yu. I'm still so prideful. Yes, if I say it out loud, how embarrassing would that be? Young Master Sun found the reason. Zhou Fenghuang was not in the mood to talk about this. She nodded and did not pursue the matter. The two of them left in low voices. The lonely peak wasn't too large. Qin Yu casually chose a place and built a simple stone house. He sat down, closed his eyes, and meditated. Sun Zifu had been on tenterhooks during this period of time. Even when he rested, he had to keep one eye open. He had long since become physically and mentally exhausted. After talking to Zhou Fenghuang for a while and smelling her delicate fragrance, his eyelids grew heavier and heavier. Finally, he fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up, the sky outside was pitch black, and the beauty was no longer there. But at this moment, there was a knock on the door. Brother Sun, are you awake? Sun Zifu jumped onto the ground. I'm awake, I'm awake. Zhou Shimi, please come in. Zhou Fenghuang pushed open the door and walked in. In her hands was a round red plate with jade cups and plates placed atop it. The dishes were still steaming hot and the fragrance wafted through the air. Brother Sun must have had a hard journey. This little sister has made several small dishes. There aren't many ingredients in this desolate place, but luckily, the wine is quite good. I think Brother Sun will like it. A candle was lit in the stone house. The light was warm and restrained, sprinkling down, making Zhou Fenghuang appear even more beautiful and refined. Smelling the fragrance of the dishes and wine, looking at the beautiful woman beneath the candlelight, young Master Sun felt as if he had survived a calamity and had finally returned to the world of mortals. This was the life he deserved to enjoy. I've troubled Sister Sunday. I like it very much. Zhou Fenghuang smiled. She set down the cups and poured wine. A toast to Brother Sunday. After 3 to 5 cups of wine entered their stomachs, the two of them laughed and chatted happily. Zhou Fenghuang filled her cup once more. She gently sighed, Brother Sun, about the matter of the ancient tree monster, what do you think? Sun Zifu's complexion changed. He hesitated and said, I fear that what Su Guzi said is reasonable. Zhou Fenghuang nodded. I also think so. From what I saw between him and Zhuolanue, it's clear that the two of them intend to take action. Before this, when Brother Sun was resting, Zhuolanue paid a visit to Dong Hanzhu. Afterwards, I asked him and Dong Hanzhu agreed to help. She paused for a moment and then continued to say, Su Guzi, Zhuolanue, Dong Hanzhu, these 3 people are all tyrannically strong. Although killing the ancient tree monster is risky, there is still a chance of success. Taking a step back, even if you and I don't want to interfere, after leaving them our strength will be greatly weakened. We might not be able to last until the end. Sun Zifu tentatively said, Sister Sun, you mean to join forces with them? Zhou Fenghuang nodded. I do have this intention. I wonder what Brother Sun thinks. Sun Zifu's complexion was cloudy and uncertain. After a long time, he ruefully smiled and said, I know that I am weak. If I don't join forces with you, I fear there will be no way for me to survive. Since Sister Sun has agreed, then I will go with you. Zhou Fenghuang was overjoyed. Her eyes shined. Brother Sun, there is no need to belittle yourself. When we hunt down the ancient tree monster, we will need to rely on Brother Sun's strength. She pursed her lips. I heard that Brother Sun's family bloodline has already awakened. I wonder if this is true. Sun Zifu nodded. It has indeed awakened. That's great. Zhou Fenghuang explained, the ancient tree monster is hidden in a small world. Finding its main body won't be easy at all. But with Brother Sun's help, you will naturally be able to lock onto the ancient tree monster from afar. She hesitated for a moment. But, there is one more matter that I need Brother Sun's help with. Sun Zifu asked, what is it? The ancient tree monster is the remnant body of the monster race Great Emperor, just how honored is its status? If you and I hunt it down, there is a chance that we will trigger the monster race's bloodline curse. So, we need someone to block the bloodline curse at a critical moment. Zhou Fenghuang observed his expression. What does Brother Sun think of Yao Bin? Sun Zifu's complexion changed. This. I received much help from that person, otherwise I fear I wouldn't have been able to come here. Zhou Fenghuang grasped his hand. Brother Sun, those who wish to accomplish great things shouldn't bother with trifles. Moreover, there is no suitable candidate here besides him. Brother Sun, the monster race's bloodline curse only has a certain chance of being triggered. Perhaps we don't need him to resist it at all. Taking a step back, even if he really does contribute himself, after we leave this small world, we will find a way to compensate him. This time, Sun Zifu really hesitated. His instincts told him that Qin Yu wasn't someone easy to deal with. It wouldn't be so simple to scheme against him. Sister Sun, should we consider this matter at length? Zhou Fenghuang shook her head. This is everyone's decision. Brother Sun, you must not provoke the dissatisfaction of others because of this. It must be known that Yao Bin and we are not people of the same world to begin with. Letting him handle this matter is the best result. Sun Zifu sighed. All right, I know what to do. Zhou Fenghuang grasped his hand again and left behind a jade pendant. After whispering a few words of advice, she turned and floated away. Sun Zifu glanced at this clearly extraordinary jade pendant. His pupils shrank and he bitterly smiled inwardly. Yao Bin, it isn't that I am an ungrateful person who bites the hand that feeds me, but in this situation, if I don't agree to harm you, others will harm me. The monster race's bloodline curse might not be triggered, and even if it is, you might not die. I guarantee that as long as you can leave this small world alive, I will keep my promise and properly compensate you. As he spoke, he picked up the jade pendant, clenched his teeth, and pushed open the door. Qin Yu opened his eyes in the darkness. Who is it? Fellow Daoist Yao, it's me. The stone door opened and Sun Zifu smiled brightly. Fellow Daoist Yao, I wonder if it's convenient for you. Qin Yu moved to the side to let him in. Sun Zifu rambled on and on. The general meaning was that everyone had already decided to hunt down the ancient tree monster and they wanted him to invite Qin Yu to join them. Fellow Daoist Yao, the situation is dangerous. You and I can only take a gamble. There were many more things he wanted to say, but Qin Yu didn't give him a chance to speak. He nodded in agreement. Young Master Sun nearly choked on his own saliva. He was immediately overjoyed. That's great. Compared to those people on the mountain, I trust fellow Daoist Yao more. You and I must get closer. After some compliments, Sun Zifu left behind a life-saving treasure passed down from his ancestors and bid his farewells with a bright smile. Qin Yu sent him away. As he looked at the jade pendant on the table, a mocking light flashed in his eyes. Without batting an eyelid, he reached out and put away the jade pendant. If he didn't do this, how could he make others feel at ease? As Qin Yu was putting away the jade pendant, in another stone house on the summit, Su Guzi opened his eyes and slowly nodded. Everything is ready. Once everyone is gathered tomorrow, we will immediately leave. He looked up at Sun Zifu, who had just arrived. Fellow Daoist son, I'll have to rely on you tomorrow. Young Master Sun absent-mindedly nodded. He always felt that this matter had gone a bit too smoothly, so smoothly that it felt unreal. Was Yaobin really so easy to deal with? Chapter 501. Zhuolanyue's lips curled up in a mocking smile. Although this surname Yao had some strength, in their eyes he was nothing more than a chess piece that could be discarded at any time. The monster race bloodline backlash might not be triggered, but he would inevitably die in the end. This was because no one present wanted another person to share the harvests with. It had to be known that although the ancient tree monster was terrifying, it also contained unimaginable good fortune. Zhou Fenghuang had a light expression. She didn't care about his life or death at all. A blue sea that was over 100 years old was destined to have limited future achievements. How could he compare with the people here today? Moreover, what came next was the most important matter, the distribution of the crystals. Ancient tree monster, if they really succeeded, thinking of this, Zhou Fenghuang took a deep breath and her face blushed red. Dong Hanzhu crossed his arms across his chest. His complexion was cold and there was a bit of regret in his eyes. This Yaobin was indeed strong, but his background was too poor. His fate was doomed today. There was no need to worry about someone who would die. He looked up, his eyes like lightning. Su Guzi, it's time to discuss the distribution of the demon blood crystals. Within the stone house, everyone's breath caught in their throat. Their eyes blazed with heat. The next day, on the lonely peak, everyone gathered together once more. Without surprise, everyone agreed to hunt down the ancient tree monster. Su Guzi solemnly said, "Everyone, since you and I have joined hands, we should put down all grudges and sincerely work together to achieve our goal. I will say the ugly words first. If someone is half-hearted and tries to attack us from behind, they will be our public enemy and we will join forces to kill them." As he spoke, his eyes fell on Zhuolanyue. This person faintly smiled. "Fellow Daoist Yaobin, the grudges between us can wait until we leave this small world to deal with them." Dong Hanzhu coldly sneered. "I won't do anything." Su Guzi nodded with satisfaction. "Fellow Daoist Yaobin, what do you think?" "I only want to live. If I can live in peace, that would naturally be the best. But, would you give me a chance to live in peace?" He sneered inwardly. His eyes drooped, concealing all his thoughts. Zhou Fenghuang charmingly smiled. "Fellow Daoist Yaobin is right. We are only joining forces today to survive. I don't think anyone will cause any trouble." Mu Qinghuan lightly snorted, her lips curling in disdain. Zhou Fenghuang didn't mind. She looked around and said, "Fellow Daoist Su, can the person you mentioned arrive today?" Su Guzi lightly said, "He said he would come today, so he will definitely come." Before the voice faded away, the roar of demonic beasts suddenly sounded out from the foot of the mountain. Everyone looked over and saw a white-robed figure holding a long spear in his hand. Like a bolt of lightning, he pierced through the demonic beast's encirclement and headed straight for the peak. Along the way, demon beasts howled and blood dyed the ground red. But none of them could stop this person in the slightest. Qin Yu's eyes were dignified. This white-robed cultivator held a spear in his hands. As he moved it horizontally, it was smooth and natural, as if it were formed by the great Tao itself. The spear point formed a sphere, and any demon beast that came within 30 feet of him would be pierced by this spear. This person, what terrifying strength! White-robed dragon spear Zhao Qianyuan. Zhao. It's actually him. A series of exclamations rang out, and the expressions of the people on the mountain peak changed. Zuolanu's pupils shrank. He looked deeply at Zhao Qianyuan, whose spear was like a swimming dragon. His eyes fell on Su Guzi, and a gloomy light flashed in his eyes. With this, things had become a bit troublesome. Dong Hanju's breathing became rough. His eyes shined brightly, a burning fighting spirit burning within them. Everyone knew that Dong Hanju had a cruel and ruthless temperament and that he had injured countless people in his life. But what they didn't know was that several years ago, he had been suppressed by someone's spear. Even though he hadn't lowered his head, he had still vomited several mouthfuls of blood and had to recuperate for half a year before recovering. Zhao. Zhou Fenghuang's eyes brightened with excitement. The demonic path's younger generation had countless masters, and there were many outstanding ones among them. But she was the Zhou family's direct descendant and had awakened her dark phoenix bloodline. Her vision was naturally high, and although she feigned civility, she didn't place them in her eyes at all. Except for Zhao Qianyuan. The Zhao, Qian, Sun, and Li family were the four great demonic path aristocratic families. Zhao Qianyuan came from the number 1 demonic path aristocratic family, but he wasn't a direct descendant of the Zhao family, he was only a concubine junior. In the first 20 years, Zhao Qianyuan lived up to his name. He was like a flood dragon that dove into the abyss, not showing off his brilliance. But 20 years later, he was unstoppable. In just a short 10 years, his reputation had risen and he had established himself as the strongest of the demonic path's younger generation. And what was most terrifying was that Zhao Qianyuan hadn't awakened any demonic bloodline at all. He relied on the spear in his hand to slowly walk to where he was today. Radiating light wasn't enough to describe his style. Even looking at the entire land of divinity and demons, Zhao Qianyuan was a peak peerless proud son of heaven. He was known as the pillar of the demonic path for the next 100,000 years. There were countless female cultivators of the demonic path that fell in love with him, but none of them were able to move his heart. Today, he had come. He had come just outside the lonely peak. Zhou Fenghuang's mind swayed. As she looked at the white-robed figure, her eyes blurred. Mu Qingluan's situation was similar to hers. No, it was more accurate to say that it was even more serious than Zhou Fenghuang's. Her watery eyes had nearly turned into the shape of a heart. On the side, Li Mingxuan's complexion paled and the muscles in his hand bulged. Unfortunately, no matter how angry he was, he didn't dare to erupt. Zhao Qianyuan, this was Zhao Qianyuan, the number 1 junior of the demonic path's noble family. His title of heir was bestowed upon him by the demonic path. If it could be said that Dong Hanju was born with a screw loose in his head, that he was easily angered, and that no one was willing to provoke, then Zhao Qianyuan was someone that every influence of the demonic path wanted to befriend. Everyone knew that as long as he didn't perish midway, Zhao Qianyuan was destined to step into the peak ranks of the world. He might even have the chance to dominate an era. Who dared to not pay attention to such a character? Su Guzi took in everyone's expressions. He faintly smiled and said, "The person you and I are waiting for has arrived. Everyone, please follow me down to welcome him." They were all proud and arrogant young elites of the demonic path. Even if they knew they were weaker than others, none of them were willing to lower their heads so easily. If it were anyone else, it would have been impossible for them to welcome them. But Zhao Qianyuan had the qualifications to do so, whether or not they acknowledged it. Su Guzi was the first to descend the mountain and Dong Hanju was the second. As everyone saw this, they didn't have the qualifications to remain reserved. As he looked down the mountain and saw the rapidly approaching white-robed figure, his eyes lit up with admiration. A single name was able to suppress all of these proud and arrogant individuals. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would have found it hard to believe. The more it was like this, the more it proved how strong this person was. The ancient tree monster had awakened and sealed off the small world. In such a situation, Qin Yu was naturally happy to see a powerful companion appear. Just as everyone arrived at the foot of the mountain, they saw a shocking scene. The crazed demon beasts that had surrounded them were actually retreating like a tide. Their eyes that were filled with killing intent were now filled with fear. Zhao Qinyuan grasped his spear. His face was firm and his eyebrows were like swords. He slowly walked forwards, and wherever he passed, the demon beasts would flee. Even though everyone knew that Zhao Qinyuan's strength was heaven-defying, they still felt their hearts tumble and shock fill their faces. When Zhao Qinyuan stepped into the range of the array formation and entered the lonely peak, the demon beasts that had gathered at the foot of the mountain had all fled. A complex light flashed in Su Guzi's eyes. He cupped his hands together and said, "Scion Zhao's cultivation has risen even further. I fear you aren't too far away from becoming a calamity immortal. This is truly a cause for celebration." Zuolanyue's heart shook. He focused his senses and indeed, he could feel a bit of suppression coming from Zhao Qinyuan's body. This suppression wasn't intentional. Rather, wherever he walked, the rules of the world would change and naturally emit this suppression. This was a feeling he had only felt from his teacher. As for his teacher, although he hadn't stepped into the calamity immortal realm, the difference was only a single level. Zhao Qinyuan had actually reached this boundary. He wasn't his teacher who had stepped into a bottleneck and couldn't break free. It seemed that ever since his eruption, Zhao Qinyuan's growth had never stopped. In 3 years, 5 years, or at most 10 years, he would definitely be able to become a calamity immortal. Zuolanyue fell silent. He had always been proud and arrogant, believing that he was no worse than any of his peers in the world. But now, he couldn't help but admit just how sad it was to be born in the same era as Zhao Qinyuan. All of them were destined to be completely overshadowed by his brilliance. At this moment, the same feeling appeared in the hearts of everyone at the foot of the mountain. Even the lawless and vicious Dong Hanju had no choice but to lower his head and suppress his thoughts of wiping away his shame. Because if he did, he would only be bringing disgrace upon himself. There was only one exception. Zhao Qinyuan's eyes were calm, just like the dragon spear in his hand. It didn't waver in the slightest. Chapter 502. Zhao Qinyuan's thoughts stirred. He looked away. "Brother Su, it's been a long time." He nodded to everyone else as a greeting. This behavior was a bit disrespectful, but it was natural for him. Even someone as cold and cruel as Dong Hanju didn't feel like he was being looked down upon. In the end, strength determined status. Su Guzi's smile was bright. He glanced at the stiff-faced Zuolanyue and said, "Your Highness, I and the other fellow Taoists have decided to join forces to cut down the ancient tree monster." Zhao Qinyuan nodded. "Good. Then let's go." He turned around and walked out of the mountain, not dragging his feet at all. Zhou Fenghuang and Mu Qingluan's eyes lit up at the same time as they followed. Their figures moved. As they saw each other's movements, their gentle eyes instantly turned fierce and fierce. They ruthlessly glared at each other and their steps quickened. Li Mingxian sucked in a deep breath, his complexion still pale. Sun Zifu sighed. He muttered, "If there is a day when I can have Scion Zhao's elegance, I can die without regrets." Qin Yu nodded. He is indeed strong. Beneath the calamity immortal realm, besides the Southshine nation's old ancestor, this Zhao Qinyuan was the strongest person he had ever seen. Sun Zifu bitterly smiled. He's more than strong, he's strong to the point of leaving one in despair. To live in the same era as such a person is a mistake. Beneath the bright moon, even if the stars are bright, they can only be reduced to a background, a foil. He glanced at Zhou Fenghuang who was chasing after him and his eyes turned sour. Zhao Qianyuan is the bright moon and you and I are the stars. It's just that you are a bit brighter and he is a bit darker. Qin Yu smiled, not saying anything else. Su Guzi put away the array formation disc and everyone left the isolated peak area. Young Master Sun, who had been lamenting himself just a moment ago, soon became the focus of everyone's attention. Fellow Daoist Sun, the Sun family's supernatural bloodline is famous far and wide. I ask that you help determine the location of the ancient tree monster. Sun Zifu nodded, trying his best not to show any fear in front of everyone. He sat down and lifted a hand to touch his forehead. His eyes immediately turned dark red, as if a sea of blood was surging within them. An eyeball appeared from the sea of blood. It wasn't clear and was blurry, but it gave off an extremely strange feeling. After several breaths of time, Sun Zifu stuffily coughed and his face paled. The eyeball between his eyebrows collapsed and the sea of blood faded with it. He opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of blood. Su Guzi's complexion changed. He pointed a finger and poured magic into him. Sun Zifu trembled for a moment before he barely managed to calm himself. Many thanks, fellow Daoist Su. Sun Zifu's voice was deep and hoarse, like two gravel rubbing against each other in a dried-up river. Zhou Fenghuang hesitated for a moment before squatting down. A delicate fragrance wafted into her nose. Brother Sun, did you find it? Sun Zifu weakly nodded. I found it. Unfortunately, the ancient tree monster's aura is too terrifying and it also has an extremely strong sensing ability. Just as I locked onto it, my divine sense was shaken away and my soul was heavily damaged. Shall I only I can. Zhou Fenghuang said, since Brother Sun is injured, there is no need to rush this matter. You and I will first rush to the approximate location. Once Brother Sun recovers from his injuries, we can try again. Su Guzi solemnly said, fellow Daoist Sun was injured in order to determine the location of the ancient tree monster. We will do our best to look after you and not let anything happen to you. Sun Zifu nodded. He closed his eyes and meditated for a moment before standing up from the ground. It was just that his complexion was still pale. Mu Qingwan suddenly said, Brother Sun's injuries aren't light. If we continue to hurry it will affect your recovery. I know that Big Sister Zhou has a Phoenix One carriage that can be used as a means of transportation. Not only can Brother Sun rest, but Big Sister Zhou can also protect him from any accidents. Zhou Fenghuang's complexion stiffened. She sweetly smiled. Little Sister Blue Wan is right. Big Sister was just about to speak. Brother Sun, please come with me and borrow the Phoenix One carriage. She paused for a moment and then continued to say, this road is long. Everyone might as well use treasures to hurry along. Even if we encountered any sudden dangers, we can still calmly deal with them. Su Guzi hesitated for a moment. Miss Zhou's words are reasonable. There are dangers everywhere in this small world. It is necessary for us to maintain our peak condition at all times. He turned and smiled, Scion Zhao, I have an ardent sun carriage that can be considered spacious. I wonder if Scion is willing to ride with me. Zhao Qianyuan cupped his hands together. Thank you for Brother Su's good intentions. I will hurry along on my own. Su Guzi smiled, not embarrassed at all. It was as if he had already expected this. That's also good. With Scion's strength, there is no need to fear monster beast attacks. Brother Swa, how about we ride together? Suolanyua nodded. All right. Mu Qinghuan's eyes wished she could hang on to Zhao Qinyuan's body. Unfortunately, even Su Guzi had returned empty-handed, so she only dared to glance at him a few more times. Together with Li Mingxian, they boarded his 100-sword boat. Speaking of which, this boat was quite famous. It was pitch black all over and seemed like wood, but the truth was that it was forged from hundreds of broken divine swords. The Li family was a direct descendant of the demonic path sword path. They had a long inheritance and there were many sword path powerhouses under their tutelage. For these broken swords to enter their eyes and be chosen as materials for the boat, they were naturally extraordinary. In the rumors, one of these swords was called Killing Sunday. Countless souls had perished beneath this sword, and it was a demonic sword that had drunk the blood of countless lives. Afterwards, it rebelled against its master and was finally destroyed. Thus, this 100-sword boat could be said to be overflowing with sword intent and surging with slaughter energy. As soon as it appeared, it attracted everyone's attention, causing Li Mingxuan's complexion to brighten. In the end, he wasn't an idiot. Although he enjoyed the feeling of being in the limelight, he restrained the aura of the 100-sword boat and made it seem ordinary. However, everyone knew that once they encountered danger, this 100-sword boat could turn into a killing machine in the blink of an eye. Mu Qinghuan's attention was pulled back a little. Dong Hanzhu hesitated for a moment. He walked over to Zhao Qinyuan's side. I am not your match right now, but there will be a day when I defeat you. Zhao Qinyuan nodded. He didn't show any coldness or ridicule. These two people had clearly chosen to act alone. Qin Yu smiled inwardly. Indeed, powerhouses didn't like to gather in groups. As for those that gathered in groups, they often harbored malicious intentions. His eyes swept over Su Guzi, Zuolanyue, Zhou Fenghuang, and the others, a trace of ridicule in his eyes. He had seen these sorts of people who appeared warm on the surface but harbored evil intentions in their hearts. But now that he was here, he realized that these people's acting skills couldn't be underestimated. Thinking about it, the following journey would surely be lively and bustling. Perhaps in the eyes of these people, he was only a chess piece that was destined to be played. But what a pity, this chess piece of his would likely leave them disappointed. Qin Yu's eyes fell on Sun Zifu. His eyes flashed for a moment before returning to tranquility. There were some roads that could not be turned back once they were chosen. There were some things that could not be forgiven once they were done. Let's continue watching. Zhou Fenghuang's phoenix carriage was incomparably gorgeous. Black and gold wove together to form patterns. It was naturally noble and mysterious, causing one to instinctively feel awe in their hearts. The hanging curtains gently swayed in the wind. It seemed delicate and fragile, but the golden runes on its surface were like living creatures. Once they were attacked, they would erupt with black phoenix flames that could destroy all. Young Master Sun was comfortably lying down on a warm white blanket. As he smelled the faint fragrance, he felt so comfortable that he wanted to moan. Zhou Fenghuang faintly smiled. She seemed to be saying something to him. There was a bit of impatience in her eyes, but it was well hidden, making it hard for others to sense it. Brother, I've made you suffer today. But as long as we can find the ancient tree monster, no one will be able to ignore your merits. You will definitely obtain the harvest you deserve. Young Master Sun nodded again and again, a cunning light flashing in his eyes. The ancient tree monster was indeed strong, but he hadn't faced it head-on. He had only sensed its aura, and while his soul had been shaken, it hadn't been as serious as it seemed. But if he were to be locked onto, who would pay any more attention to him? Perhaps right now, he wouldn't even be able to enter this comfortable phoenix carriage. As long as he didn't lock onto the ancient tree monster for even a moment, he would be an indispensable member of the team. Of course, the distribution that Zhou Fenghuang had mentioned was also an important reason. Everyone had already signed a contract to not harm each other. He believed that no one would dare to violate it, so Sun Zifu wasn't too worried about his own safety. Moreover, although in terms of strength he was at the bottom of the group, as a direct descendant disciple of the Sun family, it wasn't as if he didn't have methods to preserve his own life. Hee. With Xian Zhao joining them, their chances of hunting down the ancient tree monster would increase. No matter what, he had to take a share of the profits. A smug look flashed in his eyes. His eyes fell to the back of the group. At this time, he seemed to sense something and looked up. Their eyes met. Young Master Sun's heart trembled. He tried his best to maintain his calm, smiling and lowering his head. The smug feeling in his heart suddenly vanished, replaced by a great deal of restlessness. There wasn't a problem with Yao Bin's gaze just now, but for some unknown reason, he felt as if he had been seen through, as if there were no secrets left to hide. But that was impossible. Although the summit of this lonely mountain peak wasn't too large, Su Guzi had used the minor Sumer treasure to isolate the outside from the outside. It was impossible for Yao Bin to discover their secret discussion. But why did he feel so uncomfortable? Could it be that he had a guilty conscience? Fellow Daoist Yao, I didn't want to do this, but the situation was beyond my control, so don't blame me. Beneath the ancient tree monster, the edges of the mottled furnace were covered with tree roots. The ends of the furnace cracked open, beads of blood falling down like rain. It was unknown how much blood had been poured into the furnace, but it wasn't even half full. It was clear that there was another world within. The sage's eyes were warm and he smiled. What a bunch of clever little fellows. You were actually able to find the position of the ancient tree monster. Although my ultimate goal was to draw you all here, I still haven't finished my business, so I can't let you come here too early. Maybe I'll have to find something for you on the way. As his words fell, he reached out a hand and patted the incomparably thick trunk of the ancient tree monster several times. A pair of giant eyes slowly appeared, opening wide and revealing an icy chill. The sage bowed. Lord Monster Emperor, I need your help. This was a squad formed from the most elite juniors of the demonic path. Although there weren't many of them, their combat strength couldn't be underestimated. Although the small world had become dangerous, there was nothing that could stop them. Qin Yu was at the back of the squad. He discovered that he was particularly idle. Not to mention a chance to attack, but before he could even react, the demon beasts that appeared had already been cut down. The ones who attacked were mostly Xian Zhao and Dong Hanju. The former held a dragon spear in his hands. No matter how strong or weak a demon beast was, as long as it appeared in front of him, he would thrust his spear and kill it. There was no demon beast that could escape. The Dong family was a fiendish monster, his every movement overflowing with cruelty. The demon beasts that attacked him would often have their corpses broken and the blood of their slaughter would overflow. On the surface, both sides seemed to be of similar levels. There wasn't a single demon beast that was a match for the two of them. But in terms of the details, compared to Xian Zhao's casual attacks, Dong Hanju's methods were far too crude. Qin Yu couldn't help but sigh once more. Zhao Qinyuan's strength was truly unfathomable. Up until now, he had only seen simple stabbing techniques with his spear. He hadn't used any of his true supernatural abilities. If he attacked with his full strength, he feared his strength would rise by several times over. Qin Yu asked himself. If the two of them were to fight in a life or death battle, he might not even have a 50% chance of victory. And this chance of victory was calculated after he considered all of his trump cards. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He really couldn't underestimate the heroes of the world. But, he didn't know that if others in this group were to learn that Qin Yu dared to say that he had a 50% chance of victory in a life or death battle with Zhao Qinyuan, they would likely laugh their heads off. "Little brother, where does your confidence come from?" Zhao Qinyuan's name wasn't exaggerated at all. From his status as a Zhao family branch junior, he had walked step by step to where he was today. Although he hadn't spent too much time, the tempering he had experienced wasn't any less. One step at a time, everyone knew just how strong he was. In the entire land of divinity and demons, there weren't many people that dared to say that they would have a 50% chance of victory in a battle with Zhao Qinyuan. Suddenly, Qinyu furrowed his eyebrows. His feet quietly separated, changing to the most suitable angle for exerting strength. Within his chest, his heart fiercely beat, pushing blood like waves through his blood vessels. Quietly, he had already prepared to attack. At this time, Zhao Qinyuan came to a sudden stop. "Be careful, something is coming." Qinyu's eyebrows shot up, surprise in his eyes. This Scion Zhao had such keen senses. Indeed, compared to these true chosen prides of heaven, after he left his trump cards, the difference wasn't just a little bit. Rumble, 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 terrifying sounds spread out from the cliffs on both sides. Large boulders tumbled down, smashing into trees and filling the skies with broken branches and leaves. It was like a hurricane was roaring towards them. Zhou Fenghuang's eyes instantly turned dark. Countless shadows rose up from the ground, weaving together into layer upon layer of a net. The falling boulders smashed through layer after layer, their speed becoming increasingly slow until they finally stopped several hundred feet above everyone's heads. Roar! With an angry roar, a black ape appeared on top of a cliff. Its fangs were bared and its eyes shined with a golden light. It held a pitch-black staff in its hands and a cruel aura soared into the heavens. Commander-level demon beast. The black ape exerted strength in its feet. Its majestic body pressed down like a mountain. It raised the staff in its hands high and smashed it down, stirring up waves of wind. Before it fell, a terrifying aura had already arrived. With a loud cracking sound, the ground began to crack apart like a spider web. Dong Hanju coldly sneered, "Come. This is a good opportunity to stretch my muscles." Dong Hanju shot into the skies. The ground exploded and Dong Hanju shot into the skies. With a wave of his hand, a dark steel staff appeared in his hand. With a loud shout, he swung it upwards. The stone staff collided with the dark steel staff in midair. Space twisted and a heaven-shaking explosion erupted, billowing out in all directions. The black ape staff shook back and nearly fell out of his hands. It roared out loud and managed to hold on to it. Dong Hanju felt as if he had been ruthlessly slapped in the face. He fell down from the skies and smashed into the ground, forming a terrifying pit. He licked his lips. His arms shook and his bones began to emit explosive crackling sounds. His body actually grew in size. Wonderful. But at this time, before he could do anything, the dragon spear in Zhao Qinyuan's hand shook and thrust into the ground like a bolt of lightning. A deep and pained roar echoed out from deep within the earth. Immediately, the entire mountain valley began to violently tumble, as if great waves were set off. Zhao Qinyuan's eyes brightened. The dragon spear in his hand fiercely trembled and he took a step backwards. In the next moment, the ground exploded and a terrifying maw broke out from the earth. The maw came together and a horrifying sound rang out. Earth Demon Dragon. Su Guzi's pupils shrank and his complexion darkened. Because of the demonic nature of demon beasts, it was difficult for them to coexist unless they were of the same bloodline. Commander-level demon beasts were even more so. They often divided up their own territories, and if a commander-level demon beast were to casually intrude, it would be regarded as an invasion and a great battle would ensue. But today, two commander-level demon beasts had appeared and joined forces to attack them. This was abnormal. As Su Guzi's thoughts raced, above everyone's heads, blood-red lines began to appear on the stones that were blocked by the shadow net, as if they were the bloodlines of a living being. Su Guzi's eyes flashed. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He glanced up and then lowered his head. In the next moment, these giant stones soared into the air and gathered together, turning into a terrifying stone giant. Magma tumbled about its mouth, nose, eyes, and ears. Raging flames burned and released a terrifyingly high temperature. From high above, the stone giant was like a mountain peak, casting a shadow that covered the phoenix carriage. Chapter 503. The ground instantly melted, turning into tumbling magma. Waves of heat surged out, burning and twisting the air. But at this moment, a smear of black appeared. It was like a speck of ink falling into a crimson sea. After a slight pause, it began to expand outwards at an astonishing speed. Wherever the ink spread, everything was frozen solid. The raging flames and magma that had been raging just a moment ago instantly turned into giant blocks of black ice. A cold chill rose up, causing the temperature to plummet. Icicles condensed in the air, slowly falling to the ground. Cracks appeared on the black ice. Then, a second, a third, and finally more and more cracks appeared. The entire block of ice shattered into countless pieces and fell to the ground, revealing the crimson red within. The flames and magma were actually frozen as they burned. The luxurious and noble phoenix carriage's appearance had changed greatly. On the soft curtains, a layer of black circles had been drawn on the edges of the golden runes. The terrifying black flames were being released from these black circles. Zhou Fenghuang's eyes were pitch black, like the eternal darkness of the starry skies. Black and gold runes crawled up her fair and beautiful face, causing her to lose all of her charm and be replaced with an austere killing intent. She lifted a hand. With a cry, the phantom of a divine black phoenix appeared in the skies above the phoenix carriage. Its icy cold eyes glared at the giant rock demon. And at this time, the fourth commander-level demon beast appeared. Before it even appeared, a layer of pale green fog spread through the air. The lush and verdant plants on both sides of the mountain valley seemed to be sucked out of their vitality as soon as they were touched by this fog. Yellow spots began to appear, turning pitch black and finally turning into powder that fell to the ground. Zhuolangyue's complexion changed. "Be careful, there's poison gas." He instantly sealed off his body. It was unknown what method he used, but a layer of blue light covered his body. Fluctuations fluctuated, faintly forming the shape of a suit of armor. Puff! There was a muffled sound, as if a great umbrella had been opened. A white spiderweb appeared above Zhuolangyue's head. What made one's scalp tingle was that every strand of this spiderweb was covered with dense black fangs, as if they were ferocious maws. After covering Zhuolangyue, the web fiercely shrank. The black fangs crisscrossed together like countless sharp knives, ready to shred their prey to pieces. The fourth commander-level magical beast finally appeared. It was as fast as a shadow, pouncing on the prey that was trapped like a spider web. Its 8 slender limbs pierced in like lightning. Unfortunately, the leg that stabbed out didn't feel the delightful feeling of flesh and blood being torn apart. Instead, it felt as if it had fallen into a quagmire. Bang! The spiderweb exploded and a fist punched out. It was wrapped in a layer of scales condensed from demonic energy, as if it had completed some sort of transformation. The seven-eyed demon spider's 8 limbs suddenly exerted force, narrowly dodging the attack aimed at its abdomen. It opened its mouth and let out a mournful howl. Humph! Zhuolangyue sneered, as if he didn't sense the pain in his soul at all. He strode forwards and punched out again. The seven-eyed demon spider opened its mouth, but what it spat out was not a spider web, but a ball of green mucus. Left grasping Moon turned his fist into a palm strike. The green goo was sent flying away, and as luck would have it, it flew straight towards Qin Yu. Bang! The green goo exploded. Several times more poisonous green fog instantly spread out, submerging Qin Yu's figure. Hesitation flashed in Zhuolanjue's eyes. He didn't believe that with Qin Yu's cultivation, he wouldn't be able to avoid it. But at this time, he didn't have time to think about it. The seven-eyed demon spider's limbs had already pierced out like lightning. Within the green poison fog, Qin Yu had a calm expression. Runes began to appear on his right index finger. Under his deliberate control, he didn't absorb the poison fog, but rather used it as his best barrier. Unless one was like him and had the ability to be immune to poison, then whether it was these fellows with ulterior motives or the powerful demon beasts that joined hands to hunt them down, none of them were willing to approach the poison fog spewed out by the commander-level magical beast. If Qin Yu stayed in the poison fog, he could temporarily escape from this chaotic slaughter and watch the actions of these people from the sidelines. On the lonely peak where everyone had gathered, Su Guzi's minor summer treasure had been able to conceal one's aura and conceal yin and yang senses. But he had no way to conceal everyone's soul fluctuations. When they met in private, everyone was careful not to release the least bit of their aura. But what they didn't know was that with the help of the cosmic Seacross spell, there was nothing they could hide from Qin Yu. In Mimi's words, the life forms of your world were extremely sinister. Qin Yu also thought this. For instance, the fiendish Dong Hanju, who was known to be ruthless and overbearing, a person who lacked a single chord in his head, was actually able to hold his own against Su Guzi. He turned around and had a brief meeting with the sword-wielding Li Mingxian. For instance, when Zhuolanjue paid a visit to Zhou Fenghuang, he didn't know what the two of them spoke about, but the joy in their soul fluctuations was clear. It was clear the two had reached some sort of agreement. After bidding his farewells, Zhuolanjue immediately went to find Mu Qinghuan. The two of them had a rather congenial conversation. For instance, even though Zhou Fenghuang and Mu Qinghuan had opposed each other in front of everyone and were jealous of each other, the truth was that their relationship wasn't so bad. In this chaotic mess, there were two exceptions. One was Xiao Qinyuan, who had arrived last, and the other was the snoring Sun Zifu. Along the way, nearly everyone had come into private contact with Xiao Qinyuan, but in the end they hadn't harvested anything. This could be seen as the self-confidence of a powerhouse. Thinking about it, there was only one last fool left. He was still having a very important sweet dream. Qin Yu shook his head. His eyes fell onto the Phoenix Luan carriage and Sun Zifu, who was nervously looking at them. Young Master's son couldn't see him, but Qin Yu could see every minute expression on Sun Zifu's face. He was indeed worried. This bastard wasn't completely black-hearted. Qin Yu's complexion eased a little, but he wouldn't say or do anything. No matter what he thought, Sun Zifu's actions had already placed him in a perilous situation. For instance, that so-called family heirloom life-saving jade pendant. That was indeed a good thing, but what was hidden inside, although Qin Yu didn't know what it was, he definitely wouldn't touch it. Whatever. He would continue watching for now. If Sun Zifu realized his error, Qin Yu didn't mind giving him a chance to make a new choice. Otherwise, he would stand on the opposite side of these people and seek his own death. The Earth Demon Dragon was extremely strong. Even amongst commander-level demon beasts, it was a peak existence. Its attacks were swift and fierce, and its defensive abilities were astonishing. Zhao Qinyuan's dragon spear was like a swimming dragon, but he was only able to knock it back and forth. He wasn't able to kill it in a short period of time, and he even had to be careful of its sudden and fierce attacks. The black ape that wielded the stone staff had an inconceivably powerful mortal body. In addition to its infinite strength, every strike contained a terrifying strength that could annihilate all. Dong Hanju's path was completely the same as his. As the two sides fought, it was like a collision of stars. Rumble, 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 their auras filling the skies. Zhuolanhua's battle with the seven-eyed demon spider was far more mediocre than the previous two. In particular, when both sides fought, they withdrew as soon as they made contact, as if there was a deep dread between them. Zhou Fenghuang, who was fighting the rock demon giant alone, was actually the most relaxed out of everyone. Her black phoenix black flames naturally restrained the rock demon giant's strength. Wherever the black flames passed, all things in the world would freeze. In this chaotic battle, Li Mingxian felt a bit helpless. It was true that his heart had been moved by the woman beside him. Now was the time for him to display his strength and have the other side look at him in a new light. Unfortunately, none of the 4 commander-level demon beasts chose to attack them. Taking the initiative to attack, he wasn't an idiot. Although everyone was working together and had signed a demonic path contract, the chances of them harming each other weren't high. But, preserving his strength so that he was in his peak state was undoubtedly the best choice. But, if Li Mingxian could think of this, others could also naturally think of it. They were fighting a bloody battle from the sidelines and you were just watching from the sidelines. Thus, when Zhuolanhua fought the seven-eyed demon spider, he was careless and was forced back. He just happened to pass by Li Mingxuan's 100-sword boat and fall behind. His face paled and his breathing became rapid. Fellow Daoish Li, Miss Mu, I have accidentally breathed in the poison fog. Please help me. Mu Qinghuan respectfully said, Fellow Daoist Zhua, please rest for the time being. Leave it to us. As she spoke, she eagerly looked over. The bit of anger in Li Mingxuan's heart immediately dissipated, replaced by a heroic spirit. Sister, rest assured that with me here, I won't allow this ugly demon beast to harm you in the least. Humph. Surname Zhua, I'll remember this first. He lifted a hand and slapped out. The 100-sword boat trembled and howled as it flew out. The tip shrank and shrank, transforming into a terrifying great sword. Black infernal energy tumbled about, nearly condensing into essence. Phantoms of living beings appeared, all of them rearing their heads back and howling. Using a sword to forge a boat, the boat was a sword. Although it was incomplete, 100 broken parts were truly fierce. It was unknown how much blood and slaughter it had been stained with, but when it merged together, one could imagine how terrifying its might was. With a single sword strike, infernal energy shocked the world. Before it even slashed down, it had already seized the enemy's heart and soul. The seven-eyed demon spider screeched. With a crisp sound, one of its legs beneath its abdomen was severed at the base. Whoosh, like an arrow released from a bow, it shot straight towards the 100-sword boat. Both sides collided. The leg violently trembled. After a single breath of time, the surface of the leg began to crack and then it collapsed into fragments that filled the skies. The seven-eyed demon spider seemed to have already expected this. It instantly crouched on the ground, hiding its soft abdomen beneath the carapace on its back. Ding ding dang dang, like a storm, countless large and small depressions appeared on the surface of the seven-eyed demon spider's carapace, leaving behind unremarkable white marks. As for Li Mingxian, he suffered a great loss. As he dodged, not only were several holes torn in his robes, but there was also a wound on his face. What left him even more furious was that there was no blood flowing out from this wound. Rather, there was a faint numbness that rapidly spread outwards. His handsome face began to swell and blacken at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, he had turned from a handsome young man into an ugly wild boar. At this time, Li Mingxian was truly angered to the point where one Buddha was born and 2 Buddhas ascended to the heavens. With a loud roar, the 100-sword boat shrank once more. It was now only slightly larger than an ordinary flying sword, but the aura it emitted was terrifying to the extreme. The billowing infernal energy completely condensed into fog. Vicious spirits gathered within, constantly roaring and roaring. Tiny cracks appeared all around the 100-sword boat. This small world itself couldn't withstand its current strength. Zuolanu's pupils shrank, a trace of shock in his eyes. He clearly didn't expect Li Mingxian to have such strength. Mu Qingwan was startled. A trace of regret flashed in her eyes, because this could be considered a trump card. Within the green poison fog, Qin Yu had a solemn expression. If he hadn't been prepared for Li Mingxuan's attack, it wouldn't have been easy. As he thought, those that had the qualifications to come here weren't easy to deal with. He needed to be a bit more cautious. However, with his guard up, the 100-sword boat in Li Mingxuan's hands could only be considered a threat and not a hidden danger. This was also an important reason why he had hidden himself in the poison fog and decided to coldly watch on from the sidelines. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Commander-level demon beasts were tyrannical to the extreme. Even if he tried to hide himself, he would still be forced to reveal some of his abilities. These people didn't have any good intentions towards him. If he could understand a little more, there would be no harm in doing so. Li Mingxian attacked with hatred in his heart. The power of the 100-sword boat erupted and the 7-eyed demon spider was forced back again and again. Of the 8 legs under its abdomen, only 4 remained. However, it seemed to have an extremely strong regenerative ability. After its legs were cut off, they quickly grew back. However, the color of these newly grown legs was much thinner and they were extremely fragile. They could only support its body in moving. Evil creature, die for me. Li Mingxian roared out, his momentum truly unparalleled. But as one looked at his swollen and black head, they couldn't help but want to laugh. The 100-sword boat had shrunk even further. It was now smaller than a normal flying sword. The slaughter energy that tumbled on its surface began to burn, turning into gray flames. These flames were similar to Zhou Fenghuang's Black Phoenix True Fire. They were icy cold without the least bit of heat, but they were even colder and gloomier. Just a glance at them was enough to make one shiver all over. Shua, the 100-sword boat slashed down. The gray flames condensed into a line, its speed faster than lightning. The 7-eyed demon spider had this name because it had 7 eyes on its head, 3 on the left and right, and 1 between its eyebrows. The 6 eyes were open all year round, but the eye between its eyebrows was closed all year round. This was where its terror lay. This eye was also known as the Eye of Samsara. In the legends, it was said that it could open up a samsara channel and banish souls. Even if it wasn't as terrifying as the legends made it out to be, anyone struck by this supernatural ability would at least suffer severe wounds that would be difficult to treat. It had to be known that the soul was where the spirituality of a living being resided. If one was injured too heavily, they would damage their source. Even if they managed to survive, they would have no future to speak of. Now, the 7-eyed demon spider felt an intense crisis coming from this sword. It screamed and closed its 6 eyes. As it trembled, the eye between its eyebrows split open. Li Mingxian, who was filled with endless anger, suddenly shivered. Fear rose up from the depths of his heart, instantly soaking through his entire body. Without any hesitation, he fell to the ground. In the next moment, a white light flew past his nose. Li Mingxuan's back was instantly soaked with a cold sweat. Even though he hadn't touched it, he could still feel an indescribable horror from this white light. This was a strength that was enough to thoroughly exterminate him without leaving him with the slightest chance of survival. The 7-eyed demon spider's 7th eye, Li Mingxuan's heart was filled with lingering fear. In his rage, he had forgotten the most terrifying strength of this demon beast. Luckily, he had reacted just a bit faster, otherwise he would have already suffered a tragedy. Zhou Fenghuang coldly sneered. She lifted her hand and sprinkled out Black Phoenix True Fire, freezing everything it touched and forcing the rock demon giant to retreat again and again. Although she had the advantage of suppressing it in strength, no one dared to underestimate the strength of a commander-level demon beast. For her to be able to accomplish this was enough to make others look at her in a new light. When it came to Zhao Qinyuan, the infatuation she displayed was part of her acting. But to say that she wasn't tempted at all would be a lie. If she could move him a little today, that would naturally be for the best. Thinking of this, Zhou Fenghuang became increasingly calm. Every movement she made was filled with charm. As she stood atop the incomparably dignified phoenix carriage, she truly seemed like a phoenix maiden descending from the highest heavens. Unfortunately, there was a burden behind her. Sun Zifu wasn't bad. Although he was a bit clever, he wasn't a shrewd person. If she were to give herself to him, it wouldn't be difficult for her to become the master of the family in the future. She might even be able to indirectly control the massive ship that was the Sun family. Wealth moved the hearts of men. When one's wealth surpassed a certain limit, no one could underestimate them in the least. The Sun family had the qualifications to not be underestimated. Zhou Fenghuang had once hesitated. She had also tried to persuade herself that Sun Zifu was a good choice, but she was still unwilling in her heart. As all sorts of thoughts raced through her mind, a horrifying aura suddenly descended upon her heart. Zhou Fenghuang was shocked. Her eyes turned pitch black and she fiercely looked forwards. A misty white light held out from the distance. Passing through this white light was the seven-eyed demon spider. Her soul trembled and screamed, telling her just how terrifying this white light was. If she touched it, she wouldn't be able to retreat. Her feet moved, but she immediately paused. This was because Zhou Fenghuang suddenly thought of Sun Zifu, who was right behind her. If she avoided it, then with Sun Zifu's strength, there was no way he could survive. In other words, he might die. A trace of hesitation flashed in her eyes, but it was only a trace. Zhou Fenghuang had thoughts towards the ancient tree monster, so she naturally wouldn't allow herself to be severely wounded ahead of time. She might even be able to bury her entire future along with her. So, after pausing for a moment, Zhou Fenghuang gently floated forwards. Sun Zifu's eyes widened. As he looked at the white light howling towards him, he was stunned at first, but then it turned into a deep fear. At this moment, his mind was blank. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared in his peripheral vision. It rushed in front of him like a bolt of lightning and grasped out a hand. Qin Yu felt his entire body turn cold, as if he had fallen into an ancient cave of ice. His mortal body and soul shivered beneath this chill. Within his soul space, faint traces of white frost appeared, rapidly spreading outwards. The white light hung in the air, ripples spreading outwards. At this moment, Qin Yu could feel an intense threat, as if the world would collapse. And the source of this threat came from the ripples around the white light, as if an extremely terrifying existence was about to appear. Unfortunately, Qin Yu didn't, or to be more accurate, it was the existence within his soul space that didn't have the chance to appear. With a flash of light, the cosmic Seacross bell vanished. Mimi's eyes widened as she looked at the white light. She licked her lips. Suddenly, her complexion changed. She angrily said, "You dare to steal it from me." Her hand grasped forwards. Unfortunately, the purple moon was even faster. The halo of light that fell down instantly swept away half of the white light. In the blink of an eye, the white frost that had condensed in his soul space and was preparing to use its ultimate move was cleanly divided up. With half of the white light in her hand, Mimi clenched her teeth. "Give it back to me." The purple moon was silent, perhaps disdainful of responding. After a long time, Mimi coldly snorted and swallowed the white light, restoring her original appearance. Chapter 504. The seven-eyed demon spider had already been executed. Its fierce head with 7 eyes had been cut in half and its blood mixed with green venom was scattered everywhere. Li Mingxian let out a long breath of relief. He suddenly felt a bit of pride in himself. In the end, he was the one who had the last laugh. Thus, he subconsciously turned his head to look at the white light that had nearly killed him. Where had it run off to? Then, his mouth suddenly opened wide. Zuolanyue's complexion was strange. There was a look of surprise on his face, as well as a look of ridicule on his face. What benefits had Sun Zifu promised him? He had risked his life to save him. Yao Bin, are you seeking your own death? But to him, this was clearly a good thing. As long as he could obtain the heaven-mending stone, his strength would rise in the near future. Su Guzi was surprised. He never thought that this would be the final result. Regardless of what sort of agreement Sun Zifu and Yao Bin had reached in private, just the courage of Sun Zifu not hesitating to help even though he knew death was near was enough to be admired. But admiration was admiration. Su Guzi didn't approve of this method. And most importantly, if Yao Bin died, how would he deal with the backlash of the monster race bloodline? Zhao Qinyuan's battle with the Earth Demon Dragon seemed fierce and dangerous, but the truth was that everything was under his control. It was just that he didn't want to consume too much energy to kill it. Thus, he had spare energy to calmly observe the entire battlefield. He wasn't the only smart person here. If he could think of this, then Zhao Qinyuan could naturally think of it as well. After Li Mingxian avoided the white light from the seven-eyed demon spider's 7th eye by a hair, he knew that Zhou Fenghuang would face a choice. And as expected, this proud daughter of heaven hesitated for a moment and then dodged without hesitation. Ridicule rose in his heart, but his eyes remained indifferent. He had risen from humble beginnings and walked step by step to where he was today. He had already developed a heart of stone. He wouldn't do anything. Whether Sun Zifu died or was injured, that was his choice and his destiny. It had nothing to do with him. Accidents always occurred when one was defenseless. This was why it was called an accident. Xian Zhao's eyebrows arched up. He watched as Qin Yu broke through the fog, as Qin Yu stepped down, as Qin Yu blocked in front of him, and as Qin Yu raised his hand. Decisive and resolute, without the least bit of hesitation. If he had hesitated even the tiniest bit, he would have lost the chance to save Qin Yu. Hiding in the poisonous fog and sitting on the fishing platform, this was clearly the choice of a smart person. What was the reason that made him choose to attack? Was it really because Sun Zifu had made a huge promise to him in private? But in this world, what could be more important than one's own life and future? Zhao Qinyuan couldn't figure out what was going on, but there was one thing he was sure of, and that was that nothing would happen to Yao Bin. How could a person who could make him feel fear in his heart after sensing his aura so easily place himself in a hopeless situation? His eyes flickered, and he became even more curious about this unfamiliar companion of his. Zhou Fenghuang's face tightened and her beautiful eyes widened. She was shocked and ashamed, but in the blink of an eye, she completely hid it. She was not wrong. With how terrifying the seven-eyed demon spider was, the first thought anyone would have when facing the white light would be to protect themselves. Not to mention that she had yet to marry Sun Zifu. Even if the two of them were husband and wife, her choice would not change. She forced herself to remain calm, but the gazes of the people around her were like invisible flames, causing her to feel a burning pain. In particular, when Zhao Qinyuan swept his gaze over her, although his eyes were faint, she could still feel the coldness in them. Zhou Fenghuang clenched her fists, her nails piercing into her palms. She raised her head, revealing her pure white neck to maintain her pride. Escaping from death was a very simple and straightforward phrase, but only those who had personally experienced it would understand its true meaning. Sun Zifu's shivering body stiffened like iron. He stared at the black-robed figure in front of him, unable to regain his composure for a long time. Yao Bin, saved him, how could he dare? Moreover, there was no reason at all. Although the demon body tempering pill was precious, compared to his life and future, it was nothing at all. But Yao Bin had moved, resolutely blocking in front of him. There was only one explanation for all of this. Yao Bin had regarded him as a friend, thus he had helped him without hesitation in this dangerous moment. As soon as Sun Zifu thought of this, he was incomparably moved. Then, he felt ashamed. Yao Bin had regarded him as a friend, but he had secretly conspired with everyone else to place him in a dangerous situation. If there was a crack in the ground, Sun Zifu would have jumped right in. But right now, there was an even more important matter. Fellow Daoist Yao, how are you? He rushed down from the phoenix carriage. But before he could support him, Qin Yu dodged to the side. I'm fine. Qin Yu glanced at him. Shame, gratitude, worry, and all sorts of other emotions wove together on his face. Then, he turned and left. Yao Bin was stunned. His eyes began to heat up and he quickly lowered his head, not wanting to be seen by others. He was fine. How could he be fine? It had to be known that this was the destructive light of the seven-eyed demon spider's seventh eye. If he was struck by it, even if he didn't die, he would still be crippled. Yao Bin didn't want him to worry or feel guilty, so he forced himself to say that he was fine. He even deliberately put on an indifferent expression. He definitely didn't want him to say anything more. Yao Bin must have endured a great deal. He thought back to how he had been chased down by the ancient tree monster avatar, how he had encountered the demon wolf pack, and how he had arrived here one step at a time. He had received far too many graciousness from Yao Bin. How could he have been blinded by lard? How could he have agreed to plot against him with others? Sun Zifu, ask yourself honestly. In your entire life, have you ever met a friend who treated you with such sincerity? To harm him, you are worse than a dog or pig. The reason Qin Yu turned and left was because nothing had happened to him. As for why he had suddenly tried to save them, in truth, this was simply an urgent request of the cosmic Seacross bell. The little girl had screamed in excitement, saying that eating this white light would be of great benefit to her. Qin Yu had acted. Cough cough, so when he faced Sun Zifu's complex and grateful eyes just now, even though Qin Yu's skin had been tempered to the extreme, he still couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. Of course, it was best to leave first. After the seven-eyed demon spider died, the black ape, earth demon dragon, and rock demon giant saw that they weren't its match. They roared and fled. As commander-level demon beasts, if they wanted to escape, it was impossible to stop them unless they used all of their abilities. So, after paying a price, the three commander-level demon beasts soon vanished from sight. After a short period of rest, the group continued onwards. More and more people came to chat with Sun Zifu, their faces full of gratitude. They said that those who survived a calamity would surely have good fortune in the future. Of course, most of them were trying to find out what sort of agreement or relationship there was between him and Yao Bin that the latter would risk everything to save him. Young Master Sun tried to change the subject, but they were all fooled. He lay down on a soft blanket, a delicate fragrance lingering in his nose. Beside him, Zhou Fenghuang's eyes were red. She said in annoyance, "Brother, it was all my fault. I was frightened for a moment and instinctively avoided him. Luckily, brother, you are fine. Otherwise, even if I were to die 10,000 times, I still wouldn't be able to relieve the guilt in my heart. Brother, you must hate me a lot right now, but I really didn't do it on purpose. I have never faced death before, so I only knew fear." Sun Zifu waved his hand. Don't blame sister, don't blame sister. In that sort of situation, self-preservation is a human instinct. I can certainly understand. He stretched out his arms. Look, I'm fine. Zhou Fenghuang's eyes turned even redder. Thank you, brother, thank you. She blamed herself once more. It took Sun Zifu a great deal of effort to barely calm her down. That's right, just what benefits did brother promise Yao Bin that he would risk his life like this? Sun Zifu proudly smiled. Then, he seemed to think of something. This matter involves a secret of the Sun family. Forgive me for not being able to tell sister. He smacked his lips. It seemed he couldn't brag about it, but he also felt a bit regretful. Zhou Fenghuang smiled and nodded. Since it involves a secret of the Sun family, it is natural for brother to keep it a secret. Rest for a while first. Once we set up camp at night, I will personally make some dishes and warm up some jugs of wine to help brother calm down. Sun Zifu nodded. I'm really a bit tired. Zhou Fenghuang turned and left the phoenix carriage. Sun Zifu lay down on the blanket and comfortably sighed. But his eyes didn't seem tired at all. After experiencing the joint attack of 4 commander-level demon beasts, the group had become more cautious. After some discussion, they decided that they wouldn't continue their journey at night when the demon beasts could increase their strength in order to avoid being surrounded and killed. Thus, they decided to set up camp. Su Guzi took up this responsibility. He was responsible for laying down the camp's array formation so that no demon beasts would disturb their rest. In the dark of night, Sun Zifu, who had narrowly escaped death, became the focus of everyone. Besides Xiao Qianyuan and the healing Qinyu, everyone else raised their cups and toasted him. Perhaps because she wanted to dispel any ill feelings, Zhou Fenghuang did her best. It was unknown where she obtained many precious materials, but she was able to craft a complete set of banquets. Everyone ate, drank, and laughed. Sun Zifu didn't refuse anyone. In his excited mood, he soon drank too much. Zhou Fenghuang called out several times. But as she saw him leaning against the campfire, holding onto a blanket and sleeping soundly, she revealed a look of disdain and no longer called out to him. After all, it was a bit inconvenient for the two of them to sleep together in the phoenix carriage at night. She was happy to do so. As the night deepened, everyone set up their own arrangements and began to cultivate. After today's great battle with the 4 commander-level demon beasts, everyone had suffered losses. Naturally, they had to restore themselves to peak condition as soon as possible. Beside the campfire, the drunken and unconscious Sun Zifu muttered several words to himself as he struggled to crawl up. He fiddled with his waist a few times, seeming to think of something. Then, he staggered towards the edge of the camp. In the darkness, Qin Yu's eyes slowly opened. He looked at young Master Sun who was standing several dozen feet away, angrily pissing himself in the wind. Fellow Daoist Yao, I apologize. Time is of the essence, so don't ask anything. Just listen to me. Sun Zifu's voice sounded out in his ears. Fellow Daoist Yao, the jade pendant that I gave you that day, you absolutely must not wear it with you, otherwise there will be great danger. But, you cannot throw it away, otherwise Su Guzi will immediately sense it. It is best if you can find a way to seal it away so that it can't touch your aura. Also, hunting down the ancient tree monster is not as simple as fellow Daoist knowing it. The ancient tree monster in this small world is the remnant body of a great emperor of the monster race. It has been rooted here for countless years and has absorbed the demonic energy of this small world. Demon blood crystals have already formed within its body. To those of my demonic path, this is an inconceivable treasure. If you can obtain it and refine it, you will definitely be able to awaken your bloodline. If your bloodline has already awakened, you can borrow the strength of the demon blood crystal to complete your advancement. Everyone here has evil intentions towards fellow Daoist Yao. You must be careful not to be schemed against by others. I know that I have wronged you. Tonight, I pretended to be drunk and told you all of this in order to feel at ease. I don't dare to ask for anything more. He casually shook his hand and let out a comfortable sigh. Then, he pulled up his pants and walked away. He stumbled over to the campfire and fell asleep once more. Qin Yu faintly smiled. He could roughly guess why Sun Zifu had undergone such a great change. Demon blood crystals? His eyes flashed and he inadvertently swept his eyes over the camp. Young Master Sun thought himself smart, but what he didn't know was that his actions weren't a secret at all. In the tent, Su Guzi flicked his sleeves. The scene in front of him twisted for a moment before vanishing from sight. He turned around and hesitated for a moment. What does fellow Daoists think? Suolanjue didn't answer and instead asked, does Brother Su suspect Sun Zifu? Su Guzi remained expressionless. Fellow Daoists, why are you avoiding the important and focusing on the trivial? You should know that this isn't what I'm concerned about. Suolanjue smiled. I don't know. He stood up and paced back and forth several times. You and I both know how terrifying the seven-eyed demon spider is. Yao Bin is currently safe and sound, and while I don't know the reason for this, there is one thing I can be sure of. This person is unfathomably deep. Su Guzi's eyes darkened. This is what I'm worried about. A chess piece that has already been set in place suddenly has the ability to resist. I find it hard to feel at ease. Suolanjue lightly said, Brother Su has already remedied the situation. If not for this, why would you allow Sun Zifu to leak information to him? He paused for a moment. Now that he knows about the existence of the demon blood crystal, even if he knows he has been schemed against, his best choice would still be to remain silent. Of course, the premise of this is that he is truly in an unharmed state. Otherwise, Su Guzi leisurely said, he will choose to leave. Suolanjue smiled. So, we just need to be patient and wait a little longer. The next day, as the skies brightened, everyone walked out of their tents. After a hangover, young Master Sun was finally willing to wake up. He awkwardly smiled and began to wash himself. Before he could clean himself up, the tranquility of the morning was broken by something. Qin Yu bid his farewells and left on his own initiative. He didn't say why, but everyone had already filled in their own thoughts. Indeed, that white light from yesterday wasn't easy to deal with. Sun Zifu opened his mouth to speak, but in the end he fell silent. It was dangerous to leave the group, but if he continued to stay here, he feared it would be difficult to escape this calamity. Su Guzi lightly sighed. If fellow Daoist Yao insists on doing this, then I won't try to persuade you any further. It's just that this small world is filled with perils. Fellow Daoist should be careful. Qin Yu cupped his hands together and turned to leave. Wait a moment. Sun Zifu tossed it over. With a cold expression, he said, Fellow Daoist Yao, since you are leaving halfway, please return the precious jade I gave you. What am I doing? Oh, I must be going crazy. Qin Yu glanced at him. He took out the jade pendant and placed it in Sun Zifu's hand. His feet moved and he soon vanished from sight. Seeing Qin Yu be so straightforward, Sun Zifu was stunned for a moment. Then, he grit his teeth. For better or worse, he was still a man. He might as well pay back his life. Yao Bin, this is all I can do. I hope that their thoughts are all on the ancient tree monster and they will let you live. Sun Zifu took a deep breath and turned around. He smiled and said, Everyone, let's hurry on our way. At this moment, he could clearly see the surprise in everyone's eyes. In particular, Zhou Fenghuang's eyes were particularly complex. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.